Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Essays and Espresso podcast. I am joined by my cohorts, my two stooges, Boken and Acer. How you doing, everyone?
I feel like shit.
Good.
But I'm
That's
still
awesome.
podcasting, yeah.
That's fucking great. Why do you feel like shit?
Well, I was sick at home with a filled lung because I came down from a cold.
What?
And then
what?
Oh.
I don't know how to translate that into English. I don't know what the technical term is, but
Well, like flu?
What, do you have like bronchitis or something?
I was just coughing the whole time, and my doctor told me I need to rest and clear my lung.
How? How do you
There's
clear your
phlegm in
lung?
there or something. I don't know. I think that's normal.
But like,
Were you
he
working
just
with
told you.
asbestos?
But how do you? What is the process of clearing it out? Like
Nothing. Well, I took some like pills. And
okay, so he
I
gave you some
I
medicine.
drank a lot and I didn't move. And anyway, the point is, I was at a party yesterday and everyone was smoking like crazy because Europeans suck. And now it hurts to breathe,
That
and that
sucks.
fucking sucks. when I cough now, it fucking hurts. So yeah, podcasting.
I see. Well, not to downplay your pain, but the essay question of this episode is, why do games rely on violence? So we're going to be talking about that after the break. But for now, we're going to talk about some of the stuff that we've been up to. And looking at the docket, we all have one thing in common. I put down The Mandalorian. Acer just wrote Star Wars in all caps, and Boken said that he rewatched A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back.
With a question mark.
Question mark? Episode 5?
Also, I watched episode 9, and you guys didn't, I think.
No, I didn't, because I have self-respect.
The fuck? You gotta get over yourself, man.
I'm sorry. I like watching things that are good. I don't want to watch something that's gonna make me hate myself.
Hey Daniel, did you watch Batman v Superman? It's pretty good.
I did not.
It's pretty good. You should watch that. You should watch the extended version. It's
I
3.5
really don't.
hours long.
I really don't want to. I think I'd rather do anything else.
We really need to have a talk on watching bad shows. I can't follow your logic at all. Like, I just...
You can't follow the logic.
We're in the wrong here.
No, this is not about wrong or right. This is just... even if I hate... Like, I don't hate Star Wars, but even if I hated it, I need to know where they're going. I just need to see it. You know? It's not an option for me not to watch it, no matter how much I hate it.
Let me
You're
make this
addicted
clear.
to consuming media, Bogan.
You are basically that fucking red letter media quote of like, consume product and then get excited.
No, absolutely not. That is not true. That quote is directed at mindless fans who gobble up everything.
Says the man with the stormtrooper helmet.
Well,
This is like the third time you've made somebody on this podcast has mocked Boken for that thumbnail. I say it's
a good thumbnail, you know? It's a good avatar.
I'm putting a kibosh on that. We've mocked him too often about that helmet.
All right, you're right.
But also, as I was saying, that quote is directed towards dumb fans who don't watch anything critically. And I watch it because I'm interested in the history of Star Wars and where it's going and general media trends and all that shit, you know? I watch it.
Sure.
I watch it from a distance because I'm interested in the discourse.
I will say this. I have seen every episode of Star Wars except for 9. For that reason, eventually I will watch episode 9. I just don't want to spend a lot of money to go to the fucking movie theater to watch it. If I'm going to watch it, you know, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to wait for it to be at a reasonable price that I can like stream it, you know, rent it or whatever, and
you
then
can watch it at 2 times the speed to save time.
I can do that. Yes.
Be kind of
I
economic
watched
about
Star Wars
it.
Episode 9 in 90 minutes.
Because if I'm gonna go to the movie theater, I'd rather watch something I'm genuinely interested in, like Uncut Gems. I want to watch that. That looks really good.
What is that?
But some drama with Adam Sandler. Here's the rule with Adam Sandler: if it's a film that he's making himself and it's a comedy, it's shit. If he has nothing to do with the creative process aside from being an actor, chances are it's pretty decent.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Those Hotel Transylvania movies do well.
Punch Drunk Love
Punch Drunk
is really
Love
good.
was pretty
That's
exceptional.
that's a good one.
Yeah, that movie is great. Reign Over Me had some problems, but decent movie.
What's the one where he is brothers with Ben Stiller?
I have no idea.
Okay.
What's the one where he wanted to go on Hawaiian vacation for 4 months, so he made a movie with Jennifer Aniston?
I have no idea.
That's like all of them. He just
Anyway,
wants to go on
Star
vacation.
Wars.
Yes, so
What are we gonna talk
I wanted
about?
to ask you about rewatching episodes 4 and 5, because you rewatched not the original versions. You watched like the weird special edition versions.
Well, for 4, yes. For 5, I'm not
4.
sure.
So I have a vague recollection of that version of episode 4. My main takeaway was, wow, all this CGI stuff is complete shit.
It is.
And borderline ruins the
It is
movie.
the absolute. Well, it doesn't ruin it, but it is. There's a Plinkett quote where he says, "This is why I find these special editions so fucking offensive, because they keep shoving shit everywhere." And I never understood that quote because I never saw these versions, and now I get it. It is
Now
fucking
you have
crazy.
full appreciation. For
It
that
is.
quote.
There's so much dumb shit in the
I would
in
say,
frame, and it doesn't look good. It looks so out of place. Like someone was going over there after the fact and like added in a bunch of garbage CGI effects for no reason.
They removed this. They removed the song from the cantina. That song is so good.
No, the song was there.
No, but
changed it, didn't
they removed the musicians playing on the flutes or whatever, and they replaced it with that CGI monstrosity singing a different song.
Oh
No,
no.
That's in Return of the Jedi.
Wait,
They added
is it?
in where the guy's screaming and you see into his mouth. That's in Jabba's palace. They added
God.
that scene in.
Oh god,
shit.
I'm getting them mixed up.
Yeah.
I would say though that like a third of the CGI, a third of the changes they made, or even a half of them, are totally justified. Because there's a lot of changes that are just like the way the Death Star explodes. They added like a ring to the explosion, so it's a lot more cinematic than the just 1977 effect they had. They removed the outlines on the X-wings. All that stuff I think is totally legit. It's
Well,
just that
Yeah,
That's the stuff I
guess.
didn't even notice because
but
But I get you, but at the same time, I think it's somewhat disrespectful to the people that put their hard work into the original versions of these films just for their
maybe
just
they
to be
should have
scrubbed away.
maybe they should have tried harder. It wasn't good enough.
That is quite possibly one of the douchiest things you've ever said.
we definitely needed these fucking CGI stormtroopers with bad animations riding giant dinosaurs in the desert. That added so much to the movie.
How did you
Thank
feel
you,
when they were
George.
on the speeder in Mos Eisley and a giant dinosaur just took 5 seconds to walk right across the screen?
Yeah.
It's so terrible.
What the fuck?
But yeah, how was rewatching episodes 4 and 5?
Oh, it was delightful. I mean, I'm
Do the movies
not the
still
biggest
hold
fan.
up?
Yes, actually, I was surprised. Especially episode 4 was just, I don't know, it was so enjoyable. Some of the acting is really great, like when there's these sudden bursts of joy when they destroy the Death Star, or when they get free of something, when they get free of the garbage disposal
Oh yeah,
room.
the garbage monster.
They are so happy, like they're celebrating, they're screaming. I was just like, Jesus, why are these people so emotive? I was really surprised because I haven't seen that in Star Wars in a long time.
Emotion in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
No stupid dumb jokes, you know. Just great movies. Not my favorite, but I I understand why these movies blew up the way they did. And what I kind of came away from was that I critically examined all the Star Wars stuff I also like that came after, and realizing how recycled these ideas are. Like how little original thought there is in even something like Jedi Outcast, which that is one of my favorite games ever. But all the set pieces, all the locations, all that shit was taken from, the first movies.
Okay, so I listened and watched a live stream with the developers of Jedi Outcast, and they gave a bit of insight about the creation of the game, and they said that LucasArts specifically gives them a checklist of things that should be in the games.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering why stuff seems recycled, it's for that reason more than likely.
I mean, it's the same with the first three movies. Like you watch episode 4 and you go, oh, I've seen that there. I've seen that in episode 2. I've seen that again in Jedi Academy. I've seen that in KOTOR,
Actually, in KOTOR 2, I think the reason why that game was able to get away with being different is because that was during a transitional period in LucasArts. So I think they were able to get away with certain shit in that game that normally wouldn't have flown because there was in management changes going on, and at one point I think that's also why the game was rushed out of the door, because the new people that were in Lucasfilm or LucasArts rather, they were like, what the fuck is this, why are we funding this, whatever, just ship it out.
No, what I made a video on this. If I remember correctly, Jim Ward, he had recently taken over LucasArts, and he took over in the middle of the development of KOTOR 2. And what's the man who was the head of Obsidian? His name is, he still is.
Mark Sawyer?
No. He has his name sounds like he's an orc from Lord of the Rings. But I don't remember what it is. But basically, he had been communicating with the old heads at LucasArts back when they were in control of everything. And he had a verbal agreement that they could get a 3-month extension to the development to more fully flesh out some ideas. And then Jim Ward came over, and when it came time to sign the contracts, because it had been a verbal agreement, Jim Ward didn't want to do that. He didn't want any... he didn't like the idea of external studios and entities managing their property. He wanted to just fire as many people from LucasArts as he could and get LucasArts back in the green or in the black. And they didn't sign the contract with Obsidian, so they effectively lost 3 months of development. So they had to really just, we have to rip out content, we have to recycle this, and we got the game we got. But then the modders fixed it somewhat.
Yeah, it's still, even the modders couldn't fix everything. It's still kind of glitchy. KOTOR 2 still crashes.
Yes.
Well, for some people. It hasn't crashed on me specifically, but I have encountered a couple of weird glitches here and there, but nothing game breaking. Yeah. If you're going to play KOTOR 2, you should play it with the mod, because if you play it vanilla, it's even glitchier and worse. So
yes.
The mod isn't perfect, but it's the definitive way to play the game.
Yes, Chris Avalon told me that the modded version is the definitive version of the game as far as he's concerned.
That's good. You heard it here, folks. Chris Avalone, friend of the podcast.
Friend of mine, not yours. You've never talked to him.
He's talked about me.
Yeah, in a very disparaging way, if you recall.
I'll take it.
Now, Chris Avalone, friend of the podcast, when he does the podcast, when Pokin gets off his ass to play KOTOR 2, play KOTOR 2, you monster, he said that's the definitive way to play it. How did you feel about how did you feel about the blatant structural mess that was A New Hope? Because I rewatched it too recently, and I think there's a lot of problems with the presentation. Like how Luke Skywalker is given a lightsaber he doesn't use throughout the rest of the movie. Like how the entire attack on the Death Star at the end could have been... Like, why didn't they just turn on the tractor beam again?
I think, well...
Because the tractor beam wouldn't work in that trench, would it? Like, the tractor beam only works at certain angles of the ship, doesn't it?
To be fair, I think, well, for one, the reason why Luke doesn't use a lightsaber that much is because they were on tight budget and they probably couldn't animate the lightsaber very much, so they did it. But I think another reason, a more story-based reason, is Luke was still training to use the lightsaber, so he wasn't confident. He wasn't confident in using it yet.
Wouldn't it have made a lot of sense when they were on the bridge, when the guys were coming through? Wouldn't it have made a lot of sense for him to just turn on the lightsaber and just go hacking through the guys behind them on the other side of the door? I'm just saying. If it hadn't been for the sequels, I don't think the first movie would have held up all that well.
I don't know. Your arguments seem weird, though. Like, Luke wasn't trained with saber, and they mostly have shootouts.
Yeah,
so,
but
again, I'm just saying...
It's the Chekhov's gun. If you're not going to use this element, then you shouldn't be introducing it.
Well, they were introducing it because they wanted to reintegrate it in future sequels, which they did.
And Obi-Wan uses it. You know?
Yeah, sure. But Luke doesn't use it.
Yeah, because he's not trained.
You see him training with it a little bit in the beginning of the movie.
You don't need that much training with a lightsaber, I don't think.
You needed to deflect.
Like, what if he were in, when the sewer monster was killing him, what if he had turned on the lightsaber and killed it with it?
Did he even have his lightsaber? But did he even have his lightsaber on hand on that in that moment? Like, I don't remember.
He would have. He wouldn't.
No, he wouldn't have, because Obi-Wan was split off with the group, and he has the lightsaber when he meets Vader.
No.
Yes.
No. Yeah, Obi-Wan has the lightsaber.
Obi-Wan starts the fight without Luke being around, and then they just see him in that hangar.
Yeah, but Obi-Wan has his own lightsaber. He doesn't have Luke's lightsaber.
I thought that was the same lightsaber.
Yeah, me too.
It's not.
Actually, that makes sense because they never pick up Obi-Wan's lightsaber.
Yeah, remember, you can actually see it when he...
Yeah, Darth Vader is just messing with his robes. Yeah. I don't know, man. I haven't seen episode 4 in years.
I'm just nitpicking.
I haven't seen episode 4 in years, so... My opinion doesn't mean much.
My biggest problem was that Luke never shows any emotion when people die. Like,
what do you mean? He was really sad when Ben died. He was like, "Oh, I can't believe he's gone." And Leia's like, "Oh yeah, I just lost my planet, man."
There was a 2-second scene, and then they moved on.
And then he was like, "Woohoo! I'm shooting
Let's
these
go
TIE
kill
fighters.
the Death Star." And the same with when his aunt and uncle died. Like, those people fucking raised him. And
He's like a little contemplative.
Yeah, for one scene.
I blame that solely on George Lucas because Mark Hamill said that whenever he was acting in a scene, he would pretend he was George Lucas. He would mimic George Lucas's mannerisms, and that's when George Lucas approved the scene.
Oh no.
Whenever Mark Hamill tried to do a more appropriate take, George Lucas didn't like it.
Did you know George Lucas? He lost his voice for some time when he was filming. So the crew gave him 2 signs. One said faster, and another sign that says more intense. Because those were apparently the only 2 directions he would ever give people. Faster or with more intensity, or faster with more intensity.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, George Lucas is not a good people person actor.
No.
Or director.
Director. Actor.
Yeah, he's clearly not a.
But he's like
Fincher.
He's like a great ideas guy. Have you ever read the transcript of when him, Spielberg, and Kasten were pitching Indiana Jones? The first one? Like 95% of what made it into the movie was just George Lucas's ideas. I believe Spielberg's only contribution to it was like, oh, we gotta have him use his whip to like catch a can of beer and then he drinks it. And that didn't make it into the movie. But George Lucas, there's like these paragraphs of George Lucas going like, okay, at the end of the story, he has to use the whip to get the girl and he has to sort of drag her to her because he's like this roguish cowboy type. And like everything in this movie basically was George Lucas. I don't remember any casting idea from that transcript making it into the movie.
So what you're saying is George Lucas and Hideo Kojima are the same person.
Yeah, kind of. It's the
both
same
are
with,
both are great ideas men that are shit writers.
Yeah.
That surround themselves by yes men, and they were at their best when they had other people that basically cracked the whip on them and challenged them.
It's the same with Empire. There was this woman who wrote Empire Strikes Back, and then George Lucas read the script and he didn't like it, and then she died of cancer, so he had to basically write a new story, and then he gave the story to Kasdan, and Kasdan wrote a script. Like at the last moments in pre-production, George Lucas had to crap out an idea for a movie. And I even maintain that the prequels, the only problem with the prequels as far as I'm concerned is the presentation. I think that as a story, that totally works.
I haven't seen the prequels in a long time, but every fiber of my being wants to say you're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that,
after watching the first two movies, I question why we even need the prequels. Darth Vader is not that important of a character.
I will grant you this, that the problems with those movies have to do more with the execution than the content. Yes. I still think the content is very flawed based on what I remember. But the execution is more of an issue.
I would say that the content got progressively better as they went on. Like, obviously in The Phantom Menace, like, you probably don't need Jar Jar.
What happened in that movie? Nothing fucking happens in that movie.
No. See, what happens in episode 1 is you
the
have
Midichlorians.
You have the start. You have the start of Palpatine's rise to power, and he starts to usurp more and more power from the Galactic Republic while he's playing the Republic and the sort of separatists against each other. And that's interesting sort of political intrigue in the Star Wars universe. It's just really boring. And you have this sort of, oh, this is a slave boy we found. And I don't know, you guys haven't read the Star Wars books. I know for a fact you haven't, Boken.
I don't read Star Wars books. What kind of nerd do you take me for?
Hey.
I am an esteemed gentleman that reads the Witcher books.
The Witcher books suck.
What do you mean they suck?
I'm just attacking you back, bro. Don't be starting something you can't finish, bro.
I've only read the first chapter of the first book, but it was pretty good, okay?
No. But I'm going to take it to score brownie points. I've read one chapter.
I know about The Witcher. I know lore.
See, me reading one chapter of the first book means more than you reading full Star Wars books.
But yeah, I like the story, and I think that the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy have the exact opposite problem. I think the prequels is a really good story presented really poorly, whereas the sequels are a really bad story presented really, really well.
I think I might agree with you there, because The Force Awakens is... I don't know if I'd say Force Awakens story is bad. The problem with it is just... And everyone said this, it's just regurgitating A New Hope in like a different coat of paint.
I still maintain people over.
Wait, a good story with bad execution. That's the prequels.
Yes.
I don't know.
And
a
bad story with good execution. That's the originals or the new
sequels.
ones?
No, the sequels.
The originals, I would say that's just a good story, good execution.
Okay.
It kind of flounders, and with Return of the Jedi, it don't quite stick the landing. There's like a lot of boring chapters where they're hanging around with.
The new movies don't have a story. There's nothing there.
I would say with The Last Jedi, they had like a spark of an idea,
Yeah.
but then they
Yeah,
overcorrected.
they had several sparks, and then they went stomp, stomp, stomp.
I think
Gotta get
I
rid of
think we
that
can-
shit.
I think we can all agree.
The Last Jedi, Boken, I hear of it on good authority. That was the spark that would ignite the flames of a new trilogy or something.
What?
Yeah.
They said in the movie.
Yeah, Ryan Johnson was supposedly going to do like a trilogy thing, but that
I was just saying what Poe Dameron said.
I will say that I think we can all agree that having J.J. Abrams do the first one and then Ryan Johnson and then J.J. Abrams again was just stupid.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Colin Trevorrow left because they
Like,
killed Luke.
like either have it all different directors, like they did with episodes 4, 5, and 6, or have it all one director, but not like this. This is just weird.
Actually, though, I would say that the sequels kind of mirror the original trilogy in that you have a director who just starts it. You have George Lucas, and then you have J.J. Abrams. Then you have this other director who's a much better director who makes a much better movie. I don't know if you think The Last Jedi is better than Force Awakens. But then you have the third movie. You basically have the first director again. You have George Marquand, who directed Return of the Jedi. He was just a yes man. He was just a guy who did everything George Lucas told him to do. Richard Marquand, I think it was.
In my opinion, I think between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, The Force Awakens is a more competent film in like a general movie sense.
Sure.
I think The Last Jedi is arguably a more interesting movie.
I think it's conceptually a lot more interesting, even though I
But
don't think it holds
I would
up.
cut arguably from that sentence. It is very clearly a more interesting movie.
Oh, yeah.
It is a more interesting movie. That's why people keep bitching about it to this day. But it's clearly a messier film. Like, it isn't very well structured. It has a lot of problems. I don't think like when Luke is going to kill Kylo Ren when he's a kid. Like, I don't think they did a good job of that scene. Could have worked, but I don't think they did the legwork necessary to build up to Luke being in the mindset of bringing himself to almost killing like his nephew. Like,
Yeah.
this is in stark contrast to the Luke that we saw in the original trilogy. And if you're going to present the character in this way, you need to be able to explain it and present it and build it up in a way that makes sense, and they didn't do that.
Yeah, I would. There is an argument people make that Luke is a character who has always sort of been on the precipice of making really bad decisions. When, for example, he goes to Cloud City to save his friends, even though Yoda tells him not to. He gets captured by the Emperor, and he almost kills his father. But yeah, I agree with you that maybe you devote a bit more time into sort of showing us. Let's see him get a bit into that space. Because
Yeah,
I totally buy that Luke Skywalker would try to do it. I believe he would have he would fall a bit and almost do it, but you need to do, like you said, a little more legwork, just a little bit.
I'm just saying, that scene in and of itself is not bad, but the fact that there wasn't enough lead up to it to explain how it got to that point was a problem.
Sure.
And I think that's a big problem with The Last Jedi in general, where like it has really cool ideas and concepts, but it's not fleshed out enough. It's not good enough build up. And there was also that whole sequence with John Boyega's character Finn. That whole fucking thing with him and Rose was pointless. Like that whole fucking part of the movie.
Casino Planet? Yeah.
That whole part of the movie was utterly pointless. Just a waste of time. And I don't want people going like, "Oh, but the themes." Shut the fuck up.
And I just wonder how much of that is Ryan Johnson's fault. Like I'm not interested in defending him, but that seems like a scene
better movie maker.
Yeah, but that seems like a scene that would come in because people in the background are meddling with the production and want we need to at this point in the movie we need to go to this planet. We need to have new visuals, Or we need to
guess.
give these
Yeah.
characters something to do.
Ryan Johnson directed like all the best Breaking Bad episodes, and he wrote them too. So
and apparently, I haven't seen it, but apparently Knives Out, which he directed, is fucking great. Like, people love that movie.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily fair to put all the blame on Ryan Johnson. I think the way he's handled it is not the best.
See, I disagree. I think he's handled it really, really well.
I mean the fan reaction.
Yeah,
Like-
I know. I think that the proper attitude to have is just like, hey, fuck you. If you're gonna call me a roundhead loser, then I'm gonna tell you to fuck yourself.
I think the high road would have been a better approach, but whatever. I don't think wasting his time arguing with like randos on Twitter about my film is good actually is very professional.
Do you guys have any questions about episode 9?
I already know Kylo Ren is really, really dead. Sorry, Daniel.
Spoilers, by the way.
Oh, I don't care.
Good.
I know he's dead, but he's not coming back. This is like dead.
I don't know.
But no one's ever
was
really gone.
Palpatine not that dead?
He was supposed to be.
Yeah. And then he came back.
He came back so Kylo Ren could change his diapers.
They could fucking do everything. There's no universe anymore. There's no rules. They can do whatever the fuck they want.
Daniel,
Change my diapers, Kylo.
This is a really unfunny joke you're doing, Daniel.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna kill this before it goes any further.
And like Palpatine, he's just there at the start of the movie. There's not even a reveal or anything. The text scroll at the beginning literally starts with Palpatine is back.
Really?
Yeah, and then
that was revealed in Fortnite.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. What the fuck are you doing? I mean, it was revealed in the trailer.
Yeah.
We all
I remember
knew.
I talked.
But the actual he did some sort of announcement or something, and that announcement can only be heard in Fortnite for some fucking reason.
Brand synergy. When I was talking to my friend Chris Avalon, the first trailer had just come out, and it ended with him laughing. And I said something to the effect of, because we were talking about Star Wars, we just briefly touched on it. I said something to the effect of, that's pretty weird. But surely it's just like a ghost or something, right? And Chris Avalon said, and then I said, well, I mean, they wouldn't just bring him back, would they? That would be really weird. And he said, yeah, that would be very weird. It would be very weird if they did that.
Yeah, it's terrible. And it's not even that he's just back. He built an entire fucking fleet of Star Destroyers who, as it is revealed, all have the capacity to destroy planets.
Oh, let's just fucking...
How did he do that?
Just
He is on some weird planet with people working there. Or he conjured the fucking fleet because he's apparently a god. I don't know. They don't explain
He used
it.
the dark
Literally
side. He used the dark side.
In the
the
first
Force.
fucking 2 minutes of the movie, it is Palpatine is back. Kylo meets him. He has a giant fleet. Let's start the movie. That's basically how it
Talk
goes.
Oh my god, that's terrible.
Talk
That sounds
about
terrible.
power creep. This is power creep. We in the video game business, we have a lot to talk about here. Why not just have, Palpatine is back and we need to stop him before he reassembles a giant armada or shit?
Because then you can't have a giant battle scene at the end.
Does anybody want that giant battle scene?
I don't know. I know I don't want it. But it's your fucking the end of the trilogy. You need a big battle scene.
See,
Okay, all right.
I feel like Return of the Jedi showed that. Well, they had a big battle scene too, but that's like a really intimate moment in the Emperor's throne room, where it's just Luke and his father and the Emperor. That's a really good ending.
Yeah, there's a reason why even people that don't like Return of the Jedi will at least go okay, but the scene with Palpatine and Luke and Vader, that scene's fucking like god tier. That's like one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars. Because there's a lot, because it wasn't just like a dumb fight scene. There was like tension. There was like the interesting dynamics between like the three characters and their relationship with each other. Like it was really well thought out, interesting scene.
Can I spoil something from one of my favorite Star Wars books, Shadows of the Empire? It's not a big spoiler. It's just a little moment in that movie.
You can spoil everything you want.
Sure.
It's Star Wars 5.5. It happens right before Return of the Jedi. And it's basically how Luke and the gang got to Jabba's palace, and it's also these sort of political battles of a Prince Shizor of the Black Sun, who's the third most powerful person in the galaxy, right after Darth Vader and the Emperor. And he's like a friend to the Emperor. He's like his right-hand guy. And he hates Darth Vader because Darth Vader genocided his planet once, just on a whim or something. But there's
he M. Bison that shit?
Yeah, well, there was some I think there was some pandemic. No, there were some spies or something who had some information with Darth Vader. He couldn't find them on the planet, so he just blew up a bunch of cities, and he just what's that strategy called? Scorched Earth strategy. He just killed like half the people on the planet or something, which is a bit excessive. But I think they should make that movie like an animated movie in the style of the Clone Wars and just make it canon, because there's a scene in that book where Darth Vader, he's in his meditation chamber, and he opens it up, and he doesn't have the mask on, and he's focusing on the dark side, and he for a brief moment he manages to breathe with his lungs again, like the scar tissue on his lungs and on his skin, it all heals for just a split second, and he manages to breathe normally again, and he is so happy that it happened that he gets like this rush of euphoria, and he remembers all of his wonderful moments in when he was a Jedi. He remembers the woman he loved and all that stuff, and because he was so happy, he momentarily lost focus with the dark side, and then his injuries returned. And in that moment, he realizes that if I ever want to become complete, I need to destroy every last part of Anakin Skywalker, because as long as that person is alive within me, I will never truly be able to work the dark side. And that scene was inserted so that to sort of justify his redemption at the end of the Return of the Jedi, because that's not really that's not him becoming good again. Like if Hitler and Stalin were buddies, and then Stalin was trying to kill Hitler's son, and Hitler killed Stalin, Hitler has not been redeemed. But
No.
the reason this meditation scene, I think, redeems Darth Vader is because he kills the Emperor and he sacrifices himself. It's sort of a rejection of that idea of destroying Anakin Skywalker to become truly Darth Vader. He sacrifices Darth Vader to save Anakin Skywalker, the last real part of Anakin Skywalker, the sort of final good part of Anakin, which is Luke. And I think that's so great, and I think it's so stupid that they just brought the Emperor back, sort of negating that sacrifice.
Yep.
But they should make that move. They should make a movie from that book.
It's funny to me that you said for a moment he thinks back to all the great times he had as a Jedi, because clearly none of these times were shown in the prequels.
No, I think this book came before the prequels.
Ah, okay.
So they were kind of vague. It was just like, oh yeah, here's the woman he loved, and here's just like, he's a friend
Yeah,
with
he
them
had so
all.
much fun, except he
He had
spent
so much fun.
he spent all the movies either
He definitely
killing people, complaining, or being a slave.
He definitely didn't have borderline personality disorder, and he definitely didn't have all these. There was some psychologist who diagnosed him as like manic depressive with borderline personality disorder or some shit like that. But that's
All
Star
right.
Wars.
I think we've talked enough about Star Wars, to be honest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tune in next week when we talk about Star Wars again.
Yeah, because
Or
we
will
didn't
it
even
be-
get to Mandalorian, and I
Will-
barely
will we
I
get-
barely talked
will-
about Episode 9.
Will we maybe talk about Dark Souls again next week? Who knows? Or the week after that.
I've only seen 6 episodes of The Mandalorian, so hopefully by the next episode I would have finished it and we could talk about it a little more in depth.
Yeah.
I've also watched 5 episodes of The Witcher. So when we finish it, Boken and I are watching it. So hopefully when we finish it, we can talk about it a little more next time as well.
I make a statement out of not watching that show. Because I'm so anti-consumerism or whatever. I watched like the first few minutes of the first episodes. It was fine. But it feels like a show you need to pay attention to. This isn't like a Fate Zero, which you can just play while in the background while you're playing video games.
You're lucky I can't strangle you right now. Slam you in the locker.
How are you guys feeling about we're sort of removed from it now. How do you feel now that I've been vindicated and you guys have been disproven?
About what?
About the Estes system and the grass system, and the grass system being better.
It's not better, you're wrong.
What exactly vindicated you?
General consensus has flipped.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. I haven't talked to a lot of people today. I'm just...
The grass system sucks.
Hey.
It's always sucked.
It doesn't suck.
It's going to continue to suck.
Hey, Daniel, you're being unfair here. You don't even know what you're talking about. You never even played Demon's Souls.
I beat Demon's Souls.
I honestly like the Estes system, like the grass system from Dark Souls 2 more than I like the actual grass system.
I would agree that the life gems, even though they suck, are better than the grass system.
You guys are both wrong.
You know, they're not just a better Estes.
How does it feel to be on the wrong side of history, guys?
When the big Souls Wars break out.
Too bad. Dark Souls 2 sucks.
Yep, it's a shit game.
Yeah, like, honestly, I feel like I'd love Dark Souls 2 way more if the controls, if the character just moved more like the character does in Dark Souls 1 and 3. Like the way that the character
agility stats.
Tying invincibility frames to a stat is the worst idea. Just agonizingly stupid design.
But we're not talking about Dark Souls today, guys.
Did we get to this?
Because general consensus on the healing systems flipped, and I was vindicated. But
no,
go on,
it
Daniel.
hasn't. Shut up.
It absolutely has.
You're full of shit.
Oh my god, I can't believe you're going back there, Daniel.
Shut up. You're full of shit. Stop talking crap.
There's they call this confirmation bias, where you just some people only they exclude information that goes against their ideologies, even though their ideologies are wrong, and that's what you guys are doing right now.
Oh, you're such a fucking shithead.
I think history will remember me as the world's greatest grass apologist.
Better a grass apologist than a Dark Souls 2 apologist.
I have a lot of respect for Dark Souls 2, though.
Stop talking about Dark Souls!
We're done talking about Dark Souls.
Okay. Boken, you played Prince of Persia. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Don't spoil the movie. I haven't seen it.
The movie? What the fuck?
With Jake Gyllenhaal.
Why would you watch? No. Also, that's not the Sense of Time trilogy. That's
I don't know if you've been paying attention, Boken, but things are heating up in the Middle East, and I need to refresh. I need to study up on Iranian and Persian culture.
Oh yeah.
Before I can
that's forgotten sense.
Furiously tweet whatever nonsense comes into my head.
Anyway, I played all the Sense of Time games, and they're super good.
Are they?
Yeah. Did you guys know?
Those are the games. Those are the games where you rewind time when you die, isn't it?
Exactly.
I've never played them.
I've beaten all 3 of them. I even beat the Forgotten Sands, which I typically forget about.
Did you also beat 2008?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So that's most of them.
Yeah.
Man, I remember.
never really played.
I remember having Prince of Persia 3D as a kid and playing it over and over, and it's like regarded as one of the worst fucking games ever. And
Yeah,
it probably
I saw
makes sense because I don't remember getting anywhere with that game.
I saw a Let's Play of Prince of Persia 3D just because I was really curious about it, but didn't want to actually play it. And based on that Let's Play, yeah, the game is pretty bad. It's because it tries to play like Tomb Raider, but it also has like the not the hand, but the sword based combat, and it's just miserable.
I think it's really clunky too.
Yeah,
Which the Sands of Time games are not. They're incredibly fluid, and I got to these games because I played them back when they came out, and I didn't remember much about them anymore. But after Jedi Fallen Order, I thought to myself, I want to play a game with real climbing and real parkour.
with real platforming,
Yeah.
none of that fake Uncharted BS.
And that's these
What
games.
a brave statement, Daniel, going after the most popular video game franchise in the world.
I don't think Uncharted is that
No,
big.
it's not that.
That's Pokemon, by the way.
Oh, it is Pokemon. No, it's probably Minecraft.
No, it's Pokemon. I think isn't Pokemon the most?
I mean, Minecraft is technically only one game. It's not a franchise.
Yeah, Minecraft story mode. Telltales.
I guess.
No, but
guess.
I've read multiple people say that Pokemon is like the most lucrative media franchise of all time.
It is. It is.
So it's a gaming franchise, so it's the biggest by default.
I suppose.
I guess.
And anyway, in Sands of Time, it's just they're so fun. I played all three of these games, and I could go for a fourth one because the gameplay is so good.
Okay, play Forgotten Sands then.
No, I did play that, and it's not that good. I played all the Prince of Persia games. 2008
I
is
thought
garbage.
I thought Forgotten Sands was very forgettable.
Although I do remember they don't just copy Sands of Time in that game. Like they do have their own mechanics where you freeze water to
I
create
thought that was
pillars and all that. So maybe I should go back.
It had some neat ideas.
That's very Ratchet and Clank too.
Okay.
What do you mean, okay? It is.
Yeah, okay. I can neither confirm nor deny that.
It is. You get the Terminator.
I believe
from the
you.
guy on Boltar. What's that planet called? It's the racing planet.
Why are you still talking?
One. It's from the. It's an old Gadgetron tool.
I believe you. I have not played those games.
I mean, I've beaten all the Ratchet and Clank games. I don't remember that specific weapon.
What are you? It's not a. It's a gadget.
What's the difference?
Weapons are for combat. Gadgets are for puzzle solving.
Okay, whatever.
I mean,
Get over yourself.
Gadgets in,
I feel like
in
you
the
guys...
Arkham games are for combat, too.
Yeah.
The problem with the Ratchet and Clank games
I think
is
you'll find that
together.
Ratchet and Clank and the Arkham games are not the same games.
That is correct.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Daniel? You're going to insult Ratchet and Clank, the greatest game franchise of all time?
They just kind of blur together for me. Like, they're all good games, and I enjoy playing them, but it feels like they can kind of just replace each other because they're all so similar.
I would disagree, but I also played those games a lot when I was young, so I'm probably too close to it to have a real conversation.
Like, I beat, the original Ratchet and Clank. I beat Going Commando. I beat Up Your Arsenal. Deadlocked. The remake, reboot that they made recently. A Crack in Time.
That was horrible.
Tools of Destruction. A Quest for Booty.
Did you beat the PSP games? Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank?
No, I didn't
Nexus?
beat those.
Did you beat that?
I did beat Into the Nexus.
Right.
So I've played most of the games in the series. All the ones that matter.
And you know what Insomnia needs to do? They need to get their they need to get their game together, and they need to stop with this weird lore they injected into these games when the 7th generation began. He's the last of the Lombaxes. Do you remember Angela Cross from the second game? She was a Lombax.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. Like,
oh my God, Clank! He's the son of this magical timekeeper, voiced by the guy who voices Mario, I think. Okay.
Yeah,
Like
the story in these,
the Ratchet and Clank games were always really cynical, and they've sort of lost that when they became these Pixar games.
Yeah, something happened during the PS3 Future Arc games where they lost their edge and the writing got significantly worse. I don't know. The original 3 games, particularly the first one, had like a harder edge to it, and Ratchet was an asshole. Like, he was just kind of a dick, and he treated Clank like shit.
Get off of me, you idiot!
Like, throughout most of the first game, they kind of just treat each other like shit until towards the end, where they actually developed a friendship and they began to trust each other. And then in the remake,
it's just like
none
Ratchet
of that is there.
He's like this wide-eyed child who's like, oh, I just want to be a galactic ranger, and oh, Clank, you buddy of mine, ha ha ha. In the first game, he's like, hey, what are you? I'm a robot, and I can pilot your spaceship. Oh, cool, man. I just want to be rich and famous. Get me out of here.
I mean, I will say, like, at the very least, the remake, it's fun to play.
I disagree.
What do you mean you disagree? What's wrong with it?
I think that the remake exemplifies a problem that got bigger and bigger as those games went on, and that's that every combat encounter basically becomes really boring the moment you learn how to strafe. So every boss fight is fought in a circle arena, because you're just supposed to be locked on and you're supposed to be strafing to the left or right and jumping.
That's been a problem with the series throughout all of the games.
No, there was no strafing in the first game.
Okay, fine. Maybe not the first game, but like...
And
strafing has been in the series for like the grand majority of its lifespan.
Yeah, but it was never as... It always becomes a bigger and bigger problem as they expect you more and more to use that as the main way to fight. Does that make sense? So in Ratchet, in Deadlocked, or Gladiator as it's known in Europe, the strafing is sort of automatic. That's the standard control scheme. Whereas for 2 and 3, it isn't.
That's true. Anyways, we need to get off this.
Thank you for derailing my Prince of Persia talk.
Sorry.
Yes. So I wanted to bring up a game called Event Zero. Have either of you heard of this game?
Have you
How
finished
the fuck
your
did
Prince
you
of
just...
Persia talk?
What the hell?
What?
I'm not even done with all my topics, let alone the first one.
Okay.
You're just gonna fucking talk about Event Zero?
Okay, fine, whatever. I'm sorry. Jeez. My God, I thought you were done.
I was done after Acer brought out some random fucking trivia about how freezing pillars is like the same thing happens in Ratchet and Clank, and then you went on a fucking 20-minute rant.
Ago.
Yeah, and then you went on a 10 in the middle of my sentence you said that. And then you guys went on a 10-minute discussion of Ratchet and Clank.
I'm gonna cut this Ratchet and Clank section, and I'm gonna make a standalone video about it.
Fucking hell, guys.
Okay, all right. What else did you?
I don't want to talk about
Prince
of Persia anymore. Let's talk about Darwin's game. You guys need to start watching Darwin's game so we can make fun of it.
I don't know what
it's so good.
It's an anime that just started. They're on episode 2 now. So
I don't watch anime.
You should.
I don't watch anime.
It's good sometimes and mostly garbage.
Well, you can say that about anything.
Yeah. But Darwin's game is apparently the big new seasonal thing.
And is it good?
No, it's fucking terrible. That's why you need to watch it.
Oh.
It's so...
See, Bogan, they keep manufacturing this garbage because people like you keep watching it.
Good. It's...
You're basically you're basically saying, yummy, yummy, give me more trash.
Yes, because it's funny to just watch that show and go, nothing makes any sense. What the fuck are you doing? And then
You're
also
basically
to
you're basically Boomy the cat.
is that a Sonic character?
No.
That's Pick the Cat, man.
Oh,
No, there was
Oh.
this it was like an Adult Swim like infomercial thing where it's about these people that were living in this house and like a bunch of weird shit happens in it, and this one kid is obsessed with Boomy the cat, which is a Sonic the Hedgehog knockoff that except he runs around and eats literal garbage. And then it turns out that kid's dad also likes to dress up as Boomy and runs around the neighborhood eating trash.
okay.
That's you, Boken.
So the show is
What a
about.
deep cut.
I don't
Talk
care.
about Darwin's game.
The show is about a game that people play on their phones that just appears on your phone as an app, and then you get dragged into it, and basically it pits people on the street against each other, and then they have to kill each other. And
Is it a reflection on society?
I don't know what the fuck it's a reflection on. It's just people get weird abilities by the game somehow, and when someone loses the game, they get killed somehow. Like that app is apparently supernatural, and just people are playing it in the dark streets, and no one's supposed to know about that. And the main character basically gets dragged into it, and suddenly he has people following him and trying to kill him, and he has to get away. And there's other characters that have been playing for a while, and he befriends some of them. It's that shit. Okay, so it's a forced survival game based on a phone app. And
why are we watching it? What is the drama? What's the theme? What's going on here?
the theme is that nothing makes any sense because it is just completely inexplicable how this fucking thing is still a secret, and there's no police involvement. No one knows about this shit. And when people die from that app, they get teleported away in little pieces, like in little cubes of their bodies get teleported away until there's like a blocky outline where they were on the ground or at the wall that they were leaning on or something, with blood everywhere. And they even show that on the news. And I think no one is investigating that shit. Like, the police is oblivious to this. Even though this would have made national news, if people keep dying and there are these weird, blocky, people-shaped outlines with blood on them everywhere on the streets, like, it's so weird that I don't know how this game is supposed to work. There's in the second episode, they basically tell the main character that he's not allowed to talk to anyone about this app, or he gets killed right off the bat. Which I don't know how the app does that, but okay. But even then, you would think that he didn't even know about this rule. So you would think someone who was dragged into this game would just go to the police and tell them about it, And then if he did that, he would get killed in front of the police officer. And then the police officer should know that something's fucky is going on. But that hasn't happened, so I don't know. It's just people have weird powers. Nothing. It's I don't know why. Like the main character can conjure up like a gun. That's its great power.
It's just a gun.
And then
his power is gun.
And then he conjures up a stun gun too. But for some reason, the people he fights also have like they can jump really high. The one girl he does fight with, I don't know why. Because
I don't know why, but this is reminding me of Dead Man Wonderland, which was a shitty anime. I don't know if either of you have seen that.
No.
It sucks.
I know what I'm gonna make you watch next time, guys.
And then also,
Keep going.
you start fighting people, and of course you get a higher rank when you kill people, and then the main character defeats like some really high-level players, which is also, he doesn't defeat like the female lead, basically. He doesn't defeat her because a fight can only end when someone dies, or if he surrenders, he also dies. And the main character, like the female lead, basically surrenders to him, and she says, by the rules of the game, she now has to obey him. So that's where the female lead is going. And literally the first episode ends with, like, the main character falls over because he's exhausted. And
and he grabs her boobs.
No. Well, that happens too. He falls on her boobs, of course. But then she drags him to her apartment and puts him in her bed. And he wakes up with her naked next to her. And her saying, let's make a family.
What the hell?
And then that is the cliffhanger of the first episode. My eyes fucking rolled over.
I blame
720.
What the hell?
I blame
what the hell?
anime for the collapse of modern culture.
And what is even better is at the start of the second episode, she goes, when I said let's make a family, I meant let's make a clan in this game. What were you thinking? I'm only naked because I can't sleep in my clothes. They're gonna get all wrinkly.
What did you think I mean? Like, come on, how? Ugh.
Oh my god.
And then he asks her, like, why the fuck did you why didn't you get other clothes or something? And then, well, I was exhausted from pulling you to my bed, so I just lied down next to you naked. Like, what?
What?
It is so dumb.
Normal people don't act like this.
It is so dumb.
What is this?
They just wanted a naked lady in there, and they didn't even bother fucking explaining it. She's not a character.
Oh god, that sounds terrible.
Yes,
that
we need
sounds
to
like
watch
a show
it.
you would like, Daniel.
Oh god.
That sounds like your Fate Zero fan fiction, which you sent me to read.
What?
This is
I
a
don't
smear
recall
campaign.
this.
It's a smear campaign. Bogan, don't you remember?
What?
Say yes. I'm gonna edit this section of the podcast to make it
No,
sound like
shut
Daniel
up. Stop.
wrote bad Fate Zero fanfiction.
Shut up.
But yeah,
There was this new main character who was also called Daniel.
and also
I'm
when
sorry.
the main character defeats the girl because she's so high level, he suddenly realizes that he has now like 1 million yen more on his bank account, which is like $10,000. So I'm thinking, how the fuck did the money get there, and how is no one, if through the game there's so much money being thrown around to different bank accounts, surely the government would get a whiff of this somehow. Surely this would be monitored somehow by a fucking bank or government or some agency. But no, this game has been going on. There have been, people killed on the news, but the game has been going on.
Maybe they're using cryptocurrencies. It's like Monero or some untraceable shit like that.
But it's on his bank account. Like, he literally has 1 million yen on his bank account.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. It's, as I said, they show the dead people outlines on the news, and it's like a reveal, like for the first time, that character, that's weird, what happened there? But at the same time, the game has been going on for a while because there are like clan wars and like giant organizations playing this shit. So this should have happened before. Nothing makes any sense. And it's so funny going through this fucking show and just nitpicking everything to death because clearly they didn't think through anything.
Was it Fire Force or was it Dr. Stone where they had the girl who had like a green leaf in front of her with semen on it?
That was Dr. Stone.
That
was not semen.
Why? What was it?
It was medicine.
That was medicine, but yeah, it was semen. I mean, come on. Right?
Yes.
It was like, that was the implication. It's like, oh, look at her, she's so sexy. Why does Japan produce this nonsense?
I don't know. Because people like it. I mean, I've made myself a fun time monitoring Darwin's game on Twitter, and people are eating this shit up for some reason.
Of course they are.
People are like, "Oh, this is so good. This is like the best anime of the season," and it's complete
what
shit.
I want to see?
It sounds terrible.
It is terrible.
It sounds awful.
Apparently, the manga is even better because in the manga the police gets involved like right off the bat. And they're apparently policemen characters.
Okay, so it sounds like this is a bad adaptation.
Yeah,
like it sounds like
that too.
it sounds like the manga actually like puts more thought into this stuff, and the adaptation is just like we don't have enough time for all that bullshit. Let's just like
Sexy girls.
let's just have naked girls in bed.
Ugh.
You-
I'm
you-
like
you
getting
guys
tired.
should-
Just
You guys should watch this. It is fucking hilarious.
I mean, there's only 2 episodes right now, so I guess.
Yes.
I guess.
That's what I want
I
to hear.
guess.
I will not watch this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Bogan.
Okay, so getting off that, you're done. You're done talking about it.
Yes.
Okay. Have either of you heard of Event Zero?
I've
yeah,
played
you
it.
talked about it earlier. You asked us if we'd played it.
Okay. Have either of you played it?
Yes, I've played it.
I think
Okay.
Bogan's played it.
Okay. Did you beat it or?
Yeah.
All right. What did you
the,
think of it?
Is that the Metroidvania game?
No.
No.
Oh, okay. Then I don't know what it is.
Okay. What did you think of it?
People celebrated it as this wild achievement in AI programming, and it just didn't do anything for me. I think it was kind of bored. The AI felt very. I mean, I didn't hate it. Like I admire that this game exists, but I
Yeah.
felt like the tech isn't there yet because the AI kept repeating itself. And then there was this one moment where it repeats something you said to it, and it's like this big, ooh, gotcha, where the game is so proud of itself. And I saw that coming from a mile away and just kind of rolled my eyes. I don't know. This just
Yeah, I
it's kind of
thought.
boring.
I think it's a
Event
neat
Zero
game.
Hold on.
I think it's neat.
Basically,
for-
what it's about is you're on a space station. I think you don't know what happened there, but everyone is gone, and your only
Yeah.
the only other character is this AI that you talk to
Right.
through all the communication panels, and you literally write text. You're basically playing with a chatbot, and you have to tell the
Yeah, you
AI
are.
like open the doors here so I can go there, and
Yeah, the
Yeah.
main game, like the main thrust of the gameplay is interacting with the AI and solving puzzles. And I think that idea conceptually is way cooler than how it was executed because the biggest problem I had was a lot of the puzzles can be solved without the AI. I think there's only like one instance in particular that actually uses the AI in order to like solve a problem where the AI is convinced that you're dead. Like you get thrown out of a window and you're like floating around in space, and then you have to like fly to one of the doors. And then the AI is convinced that you're just some intruder or something, and you have to convince it that you are the same person, that you hadn't died. And that I thought that was actually a really cool little sequence, but that's the only time the game really ever does that. And I think more cool interactions with the AI to solve a problem would have elevated the game. Unfortunately, most of the other puzzles with the game has to do with you have to find a sticky note, and the note has information that you need, and then you have to like open. You have to go to the computer's BIOS, and then then you can find a way to get some information, and then change the retinal scan and shit like that. Shit that doesn't have much to do with what is the big thing of the game, which is talking to the AI. So I think it's a cool concept. The execution is not super great, but I do think it's at least worth checking out because talking with the AI can be kind of a neat experience. It is clearly flawed, but I think some of the flaws in how you interact with the AI are more forgivable because it is an AI within the context of the game itself. So you can at least go like, well, okay, it's an AI, and AIs are imperfect. So obviously, when I interact with it, it's not gonna react like a normal person would. So,
I don't know.
I think it's again neat, not especially good or bad, but for something that is pretty short, you can beat it in like 1 or 2 sittings in a couple hours. I think it's worth going through, but it's not something I think you should go out of your way for.
Yeah. I think the AI is too self-aware that it becomes like a Data from Star Trek type AI, where a character like Data wouldn't just repeat what he said because he gets prompted the same thing. He would learn to say, why did you just repeat this question to me or something? So when the AI in Event Zero does that, it felt like I was just pushing the code too hard. Like it didn't have a response for me anymore.
Sure, but like I think expecting it to be like Data from Star Trek is a bit much.
Yeah, but that's what it feels like. Unlike, for example, the computer in Star Trek, where you actually just get information back. You ask the computer, give me like, what person is fucking on the toilet right now, or whatever. And then the computer will.
Why would you ask the computer that?
I don't know.
Why is that the first thing?
Computer, where's Commander LaForge? And then the computer tells you, he's in main engineering.
He's taking a mean shit.
So the computer itself, the computer itself isn't a character,
Oh good God! What a technological nightmare of the Star Trek universe.
Yeah. I think Event Zero, if a sequel comes out, I would be very interested in playing it, just because I think the idea here is really cool. And if they can improve the AI and if they can integrate it more into the puzzles, I think that then we would have like something really special. For now, I think this is a cool proof of concept, but
I want to say there was a similar game that came out last year and was called
Observation?
Observation, yes.
Yeah, I have that game. I haven't played it yet, though.
This to me sounds like a game which the horrible Steam algorithm would recommend to me because I played System Shock 2.
Probably.
That's my review of this game.
Well, I found out about it because I saw a video where apparently there's a couple of different endings in the game, and someone managed to get an ending that the developers supposedly say like that wasn't intentional.
What?
I don't believe them when they say that. But that did intrigue me enough to like give the game a shot, because there's like there's like three main endings where you either like leave the space station, go back to Earth, or you stay there, or your mind gets like transferred into the system of the ship. But the secret ending is, so you're supposed to destroy the singularity drive, and then the AI is like, okay, I'll send you back home. But depending on your affinity with the AI, if you're nice to it, basically, if if you're courteous to it, then it is possible for you to convince it to just take you home without having to destroy the singularity drive. And supposedly the developer said that wasn't intentional, like they didn't intend for that to be an option.
Oh. I see.
Yeah, that's what made me go like, ooh, maybe I should give this game a shot. That sounds cool.
Ooh, Event Zero.
No. So aside from Event Zero, I also beat Super Mario 3D Land on the 3DS.
Yes. I've also played this game.
Yeah, I thought it was solid, and that's about it.
Yeah. It's like the most play-tested video game I've ever played in my life.
It basically felt like every Mario game I have ever played.
Minus all the charisma. Minus all the
personality, yeah.
Yes.
Like, it wasn't a bad game. Like, I played it, I had some fun, but when I saw the credits and then it showed like Luigi was like, oh no, I'm trapped too, and then it showed like, oh look, here's all these other worlds. I was like, yeah, no, I'm done. I saw the credits. That's good enough for me. I'm gonna play something else.
I want for one day for Shigeru Miyamoto to make something new. I feel like he's
retired.
Yeah, I would like for him to stop being retired and make something new.
I mean, to be fair, Super Mario 3D World on the Wii U is way fucking better, and I think it's a lot more fun.
Nobody
A lot
bought
more
a Wii U, except for, well, Wii U.
Oh, ho, 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 ho.
Har.
That game needs to
You know-
come to Switch.
It really does. They even ported fucking New Super Mario Brothers U
Oh, God.
to the Switch, the one that no one really cares about.
The one that's fucking garbage because you can play it with 4 people and it's
And
it's
you can
impossible.
screw each other. You can. I actually beat that game, just me and my nephew, and even that was difficult because we were constantly like screwing each other
Yeah,
over.
I played that with 2 friends and I realized this concept doesn't work because whenever there was a difficult section, we just went, okay, you're gonna try, we're gonna go into the bubble and not even be there.
Yes,
We
that happened
had
a lot.
to take ourselves out of the game so one person can actually try to do the difficult section because otherwise it's fucking impossible to do.
Yeah, that happened to me a lot with my nephew. Sometimes my nephew would just be like, "This part's too hard. I'm just gonna go in the bubble," and then after that part was done, it's like, okay, I can play the game again now, and that sucks.
Yeah.
It really sucks.
Yeah. Maybe
So,
you
yeah.
should. Maybe you should have just played that game by yourself then.
Well, I already beat it, so
No, I mean
Whatever.
like the 2-player. Could you play it by yourself?
I didn't play it by myself. I played it with him, and then I sold it because I'm like, I'm never playing this again.
I'm gonna pawn this scam off to the next sucker.
It's because like I like to keep my games for the most part. Like even games that I'm pretty sure I'll probably won't return to, I like to keep most of my games. That was a game I was 100% sure I was never gonna play it again. And even my nephew was like, I don't ever want to play that game again. And if I was ever,
I don't ever want to play a game with you, Uncle Daniel, again. Sorry.
so yeah. So Acer, what's up with Adventure Time?
I've been watching Adventure Time. This Cartoon Network has just been nailing it for like 20 years silently, just nailing it. Always producing great content, and nobody talks about it. It's much better than that anime thing you're talking about, Bogan.
Whoa, Adventure Time
just
is
been-
better than Darwin's game?
Yes.
I am so shocked.
No, I've just been programming and I've been animating. I've been creating sprites and stuff, and I've had it on in the background. It's a really funny show, and it's like smart. It's like well structured every episode. There's like good pacing to it. It's funny. The characters, they all work. It's really good. And that's my review of Adventure Time. I'm like 3 seasons in.
I have like zero interest in Adventure Time, if I'm going to be honest.
What? You don't have to like everything just because I like it, Daniel. You can have your own.
I'm going to pretend you didn't say that.
I keep stoking the flames of the Essays and Espresso civil war over here. But no, it's a good show, man.
Mm-hmm.
What can I tell? How do I sell it? Let me sell it to you.
I don't want it to be sold to me. I have enough shit I need to watch.
This is better than that. This is better. I know you want to watch.
Do you realize that the next show I want to watch was one you already recommended, which was that spin-off to Kaiji. I actually bought the Blu-ray.
Oh, that show sucked.
What do you mean that show sucked?
No, it's good. I was just trying to make you regret buying it. You bought the Blu-ray?
Yeah.
What are you, like a guy who supports the media he enjoys?
Yes.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I like to own things physically. It's.
I also played Crash Twinsanity. I don't know if I already talked about that. You helped me write
I know
the
that you
script
made
on that.
I know you made a video about it.
I made a video about it. It's gonna be out on the 20th.
I think so. Yeah, I made a video for that collaboration as well.
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
I'm
talking
thinking-
about Katana Zero.
That's a really good game, Twinsanity. But it's like, it's a little too unpolished, and it was a little too late. But what do you mean you don't want to watch Adventure Time? What's the deal? Why not?
It does. Like nothing about it looks like something I would like.
There is a princess, Princess Bubblegum. She's a bubblegum princess. There's the Ice King, voiced by SpongeBob, who's trying to steal the princess. He has a lot of penguins.
I didn't know he was voiced by that actor. That's actually kind of funny.
You have Jake the dog, voiced by Bender, John DiMaggio, who is
Yeah,
so funny.
I do know that. Yeah, I do know that.
John
That is kind of
DiMaggio.
funny.
The guy,
John
Yes.
DiMaggio.
the guy who voices
Bender.
Marcus Phoenix.
He also voiced Joker in Under the Red Hood.
Ooh.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite portrayal of the Joker. And he only
It
did
is
it
a very
once.
interesting. Yeah, it's a very interesting portrayal. It's very different.
He's
It's nice
so-
to see someone
he's
not
so-
copy Mark Hamill.
He was so dark and so just. He was
Intimidating.
so and just chaotic in his head. But
I watched Under the Red Hood, but I don't remember the Joker, like what he sounded like in there.
He had like a deeper, raspier voice
Well, it's John
than
DiMaggio.
usual.
I only got aware of, or became aware of John DiMaggio when I watched the first season of that new Futurama thing.
Oh, Disenchantment.
Disenchantment, yeah. Which
Yeah, he's the king.
that's a decent show at best, but the king was so funny. Like
Yes.
that performance stood out to me. To where
Yeah, I
I
had,
actually became aware of the actor.
I have like no interest in Disenchantment. I was just like, oh look, this is like budget Simpsons. No thanks.
Yeah. They should just bring back Futurama. Disney has all the money in the world. Why don't they just make Futurama again?
Yeah,
Anyway,
let's
Adventure
remake
Time.
the shows I love. That always
No.
works out.
Don't put me on that box.
You said it.
No, I just bring it back. It was fine. Or don't. But Adventure Time is kind of like if Disenchantment was a really good show.
Mm.
It's like this weird fantasy universe, and it's just 10 minutes an episode. And you can watch it, Daniel. It's all free if you pirate it, like I did.
I'm good.
Oh my god. There's like a lady who's a rainicorn. There's Princess, there's Lumpy Space Princess. The Princess of Lumpy Space.
Okay.
The magical land is called Oo.
Okay.
What is this? Who's the guy who voices Morty in Rick and Morty? Is that Justin Roiland?
I think so.
Yeah, he's in it.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, he's like the most grating character in the world. He's the Earl of Lemongrab. It was just the worst. Just the worst character. Just grating. Everything he says is horrible. Just a difficult voice to listen to. It really
Doing
I really
a great
feel like you're
job
not-
selling the show.
All right.
Whatever. We'll just go to the essay topic then, since you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck Adventure Time. It's probably shit. Anyways.
You're wrong about it. Just like you're wrong about the Estes system. If people could comment on the in the episode, just comment. Tell me why Daniel is wrong about the Estes system. Let them know.
They won't because they know I'm right.
See, you people, you don't have the capacity for original thought. You just heard that the Estes system was good from some video, and you've just been regurgitating that talking point without thinking about it.
That is an extremely presumptuous thing to say.
It's a really hostile take, but there you go.
So, before we discuss the topic, we're going to take a quick break.
Yes.
Welcome back, everyone. It's time for the essay question for this episode. We're going to brew some espresso and answer the question, why do games rely on violence? So I think the impetus for this came from Boken specifically. I personally kind of internalized this question as why is it that so many games center their game mechanics around violence? And it seems to me that it just seems easier that way. Like a lot of game mechanics that we find satisfying to pull off, like violence just seems to be like the quickest way to the simplest way to make sense out of those mechanics.
But I guess that's a chicken and egg question, because do the mechanics come first and then they go with the violence, or otherwise? Because that's where I am coming from with this question is, do games set out with the idea we need to have a combat system because that's what games have, and so the violence is already baked into it from the start?
I think because most games have violence in them, the expectation is that your game has to have violence in it.
It needs to have combat in one way or another.
Just to be clear, we're not trying to be prudes. No one here is saying... We all play violent as fuck games. Like, we all really enjoy violent games. We're not trying to say there's anything inherently wrong with violence in games. We're just asking, like, how did things turn out this way, where the grand majority of games that we play are violent?
Yeah. I think it's also just a general lack of imagination, where mechanics, like combat in terms of a story, that's like, it's conflict, it's visceral, and it's something you can interact with, whereas communication is a lot more difficult to translate into an interactive experience, or conflict of a non-violent manner, I should say, rather than just blatant communication.
This, at the risk of sounding like a psychopath, I think people just like killing things in games. Like, there's something inherently cathartic about that. Obviously, sure. Now, to be clear, if a game is just like all about killing things senselessly, then nobody's gonna like it, because unless you're a fucking weirdo. Because people like to feel like there's some justification for the violence. But the act of, like, there's something inherently satisfying about, like, let's say you have, like, a sword and you're hitting something with it, like a monster. Like, especially if the game is, like, is well made and polished, then the inherent act of doing that feels good. Or, like, getting a headshot or something in a first-person shooter. Like, that feels good. And I think if you were to replace it, like, if mechanically all of that of what I just described was the same, but it was replaced by something non-violent, like instead of a sword and a demon, it was a broom and a dust bunny, I don't think it would be quite as satisfying.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm wrong. Like, there is a game called Dust Force.
Yeah.
And that game's actually pretty cool. And that game does feel good to play. But at the same time, I'd say that's an outlier. And most games, I think it's very difficult to make satisfying gameplay that feels good to play, that really nails game feel in a non-violent way. Dust Force is one of the only ones I can think of that can really nail it. I mean, maybe you can argue Tetris.
There are other forms of gameplay. There's building stuff. There's
stealth.
Stealth. There is platforming, and there is puzzle solving. Mm-hmm. So you don't necessarily need violence, but of course, most, like I would say, easily 90 to 95% of games have some form of combat or violence in them, and that's weird to me because. Mm-hmm. I mean, I watch a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows, and it's just like I can watch a movie about the struggles of this Nigerian prostitute in Austria and what she goes through.
What the fuck?
It's called Joy. It's on Netflix. But that's a movie that's a story that cannot be told in games, unless you're making a movie game like the Telltale ones, right?
Well, I think See, I wouldn't. I would say you couldn't tell it with a sort of mainstream violent game, but you can definitely create mechanics that facilitate the telling of that story.
Like what? She doesn't need to solve
do
puzzles.
it from the top of my head.
She doesn't need to build
sure.
anything.
Sure, but when I talked to Chris Avalon, I talked to him about a game I was making back then, which I've since lost. And the idea there was just every mechanic relates back to the idea that the main character is a young kid and he's a troublemaker. So if you wanted to run, for example, you needed to facilitate a run state. And you do that by getting somebody to chase you, whether you go into somebody's yard and get their dog to chase you, whether you walk on the grass and get a police officer or something to chase you. You can do everything with video games. It's just I don't think I think there's been a real stagnation in the development of mechanics which facilitate different types of stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also think that, as for what you said earlier, Daniel, about combat is just cathartic in and of itself. It's just enjoyable. I think it's also, in terms of narrative, somebody fighting somebody, that is like, it's like a human drama to it, which there really isn't for platforming or puzzle solving, except of course like in the abstract, like with Braid, where it's, he's saving a girl and maybe she doesn't want to be saved and shit like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas with an action game, you can just make it a lot more straightforward.
I mean, in Prince of Persia, Warrior Within, you have these sections where you need to run away from a creature, and it's basically normal gameplay, but with a timer, because you need to get away and the thing keeps following you. So if you're too slow, you just get killed.
Yeah.
What was that called? The Darabka?
Dahaka.
Dahaka. Okay.
Dahaka.
But that's ultimately violence too. I mean,
yeah, you're not the one enacting the violence, but violence is being done onto you if you fail.
And that's the same with like being chased if you're by a dog or something. The promise is still the violence. But in a movie, like marriage,
there's just the fail state.
Yeah, but
the violence, it is you're avoiding a fail state. You're not avoiding violence.
Yeah, but the fail state is the end of your life.
No, you just get sent back to a beginning. It's not like you lose a life.
No, the in-game reason for the game over is you got killed.
You don't get a game over. You could just get sent back to like like if the cop chases you, for example, you just get sent. He just takes you back to the grass you walked on, and then you just get a text block which explains like you kids aren't allowed to walk on the grass, and the fail state is that you have to press it a few times.
We're talking about Prince of Persia, though.
That wasn't a dog chasing you.
No.
Was it?
No, the Dahaka. We're talking about the Dahaka from Prince of Persia. When it chases you, it kills you.
Weren't we talking about the stuff I was talking about?
Yeah, which game was that?
That was the game I was making.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that, so I thought you were talking about fucking Untitled Goose Game or something.
That doesn't have a fail state.
I guess. Well, they take your stuff back.
That's not a fail state, though.
Yeah, if you have to redo progress, I would say that's a fail state.
I don't think so.
I think it is. But going back to sort of the main question, I think that I don't know if you've read the book. It's by Chris Crawford. Hold on, I have it somewhere. God, where do I have it?
Okay.
This is riveting.
I know.
Headphones.
All right, so to be clear, I'm not saying that every fail state is a result of violence, just that in the specific case of Prince of Persia, Warrior Within, when the Dahaka captures you, that is a violent act because the Darabka is killing the prince.
Sure.
But there are obviously fail states that can occur, through non-violent means. Like you could just screw yourself over and not have the materials necessary to complete a task, and that can be a fail state. And then the game will be like, oh, it's game over, try again. Like Phoenix Wright, like getting a fail state in that game is non-violent. You failed to defend your client.
Yes.
Phoenix Wright's actually a really good example of a game series that manages to avoid violence. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of murder cases that happen, but there are no mechanics centered around violence.
There's
it's
no
all
combat.
about. Yeah, there's no combat. You're not, fighting anyone or anything. It's all about wits. It's all about solving puzzles. It's about defending your client.
Yeah, I mean,
most of it is murder cases. So I mean, there is violence.
Whatever.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another
I mean,
reason
there
was
are games.
probably.
Yeah.
No, go on.
There are games that buck that rule. I mean, as I said, there are games like Economy Sims or the Anno series or something where you're just building stuff. There are puzzle games
Like Minecraft.
where you solve puzzles, and that doesn't necessarily, like The Witness, that doesn't necessarily mean. And The Witness itself is not like it's a great game, but there have been puzzle games before it. You're just you're walking around, you're solving puzzles. It's not revolutionary in that sense.
I'm trying to think though, like how would you take something like a first-person shooter, and how can you recontextualize those very same mechanics in a way that's non-violent?
Well, you could have the aiming reticule just be your hand, so you're just pulling levers, you're picking up notes and stuff. Like if you played Gone Home, you can do something like that, where you're just threading
That's
this
not the same
narrative
mechanic.
together.
That's not the mechanics of a walking sim and a first-person shooter are not necessarily the same though. They're in first person, but like there is a level of skill necessary to get a headshot or to avoid getting shot at.
Sure.
Like that's
I
those
see,
skills aren't necessary in Gone Home.
No, okay, well, but see, I don't think it works. I think it works the same way. If you like, I don't think you can ask how do you recontextualize first-person shooter mechanics. That's sort of the point. You don't recontextualize mechanics. You have to create new mechanics from the ground up.
Although, like something like Thief was a recontextualization of first-person mechanics.
Sure, but it still had violence. Like that was still a combat. It's a stealth game.
did.
But I would say it was one of the first games where you could play entirely without violence.
No, I get what you're saying. Where no, it shouldn't be about recontextualizing. It should be about making new things.
Yeah.
But I think understanding why it is that these mechanics are presented the way they are is important. Like, why is it that these skills? I don't think there's anything inherently violent about the skills necessary to play a first-person shooter. It's about timing and precision.
Timing. Yeah.
Those are not inherently violent skills, yet they're always, in a first-person shooter, they're almost always presented as violent. And I'm just asking, what situations can those skills be presented in a way that isn't violent? And I think that's very difficult, because that's why so many of those games, and again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's fine for all these first-person shooters to be the way they are. I'm just asking, it's kind of just a thought experiment. Like, how could you present those same types of mechanics that require those same skills, but just do it in a way that doesn't require you to be violent?
Well, you could make a puzzle game where you basically need to activate, like you have a giant board in front of you of some kind, and you need to activate certain points in a quick succession. You need to aim properly to hit the right points. Maybe you need to take cover from something because randomly. Oh, well, that's violent again. But.
Well, okay, if you're being shot at, then that's violence being enacted on you.
How about
you do make a good point though, that you could make a puzzle game that requires you to be fast and precise, and that is inherent. That could be inherently non-violent.
You could also do if you're making like a dating simulator game, you could have like, oh, you're gonna take the girl on a date in like this carnival, and here you're gonna throw a ball at a at a bunch of cans that have been stacked up, and first-person mechanics would translate to that.
Sure.
I don't think you can recontextualize those mechanics as something else than your character throwing or like shooting something with precision or accuracy.
I think what we've established is we can find a way to establish shooting at things in a way that's nonviolent, but getting shot at, I don't think that can be contextualized as nonviolent. I mean, It probably can. It probably can, but it would have to be like really weird and abstract in a way that.
But you also don't need to do that. Like what?
Well, I'm not saying these games need to be made. I'm just postulating. I'm just asking, like, well, what can be done? What, just to think about it.
I think it just goes back to just make different mechanics which communicate something else. Like I think you could make a very engaging video game that doesn't have any violence in it, and you're just going around and hanging out with people. I don't see why you always need violence. Like if it's like Death Stranding, love it or hate it, that game made traversing really interesting. It was like it's actually engaging to just walk up and down a cliff or a mountain.
But then it also had a bunch of ghosts and boss fights that nobody liked.
Sure, but it didn't.
Yeah, that you have to throw your piss at.
Yeah, but you don't. Well, piss and blood. But you don't need any of that, is what I'm saying. You can, like, if you just want to make a
That's exactly the point, right? They made a video game, so they had to have some type of combat in there, they felt.
Yeah, but I think the walking and the traversing the landscape, that's good enough. That could have just been its own game.
The Prince of Persia series doesn't necessarily need combat. The combat isn't that great. I mean, it's good to have some variation between the climbing sections, but
those combat sections could have been replaced with something else.
Yeah. Like different terrain to climb up or something.
Like especially the Prince of Persia reboot, where the combat is god awful. Like at least in the Sands of Time trilogy that you were talking about earlier, the combat is at least competent. It's not particularly good, but it's not complete trash either. In the reboot, it was fucking terrible, and that game would have actively been better without the combat. I don't think the Sands of Time trilogy would have been better if you had removed the combat entirely. I think those games do gain something by having the combat. The reboot, that is a perfect example of a game that totally didn't need combat, and the game would have been substantially better if it had been removed.
Yeah.
You need to replace it with something, because you can't just have climbing after climbing after climbing.
Sure, I agree. It needs it should have been replaced with something, but even just removing it would have resulted in a better game.
Yeah.
I also think the another question, sort of tangential to the, sort of connected to the why do we have so many violent games is why do we have so many violent games that are so bad at violence?
What do you mean?
The combat in Snake Eater, for example, does not communicate the same as the combat in like Titanfall. Like Snake Eater's, like the combat there is to sort of reinforce that you're not supposed to be a violent guy. You're not good at it. You're supposed to be a sneaky guy. The violence is there. You can be violent if you want, but that's not the point of the game.
And until you reach a boss fight, and then that kind of gets thrown out the window. I mean, you could technically trank the bosses and not kill them, quote unquote. But
Six Smoke, handkerchiefs. Yeah. But it's what I'm saying is you have so many video games like Uncharted. That combat is nothing. Like what does that even communicate? This is supposed to be an action sort of adventure game. Shouldn't it be?
If anything, the combat in Uncharted...
It sort of bogs it down, because you're always hiding behind crates.
Not only that, but it works against the game's narrative, because now it seems like Nathan Drake is... like, and this has been talked about to death, but like it's true, where Nathan Drake seems like some fucking psychopath, where he's like cracking jokes, with his buddies in between just mercilessly murdering like 40 people, across... like,
and then
each section.
Then he has some ethical hang-ups about killing the final boss. That's not necessarily Nathan
all of
Drake.
a sudden.
That's not necessarily Nathan Drake, but that's a lot of video games where killing henchmen is okay, but in the context of the cutscenes, all of a sudden it's really difficult to kill this one guy.
The only game series I think pulls that off is Yakuza. Because in Yakuza, the gameplay is presented as so cartoonishly over the top that it's clearly meant to be an abstraction. It's not meant to be taken literally. So like there are literally scenes where there are like literal moves that you can do where you grab a knife and you just stab someone to death. But then like they get back up and then they start trying to punch you again.
Isn't there a move where you stick a bunch of nail in a guy's mouth or something, and then you kick him in the jaw or some shit?
Yes.
That's cool.
If their health bar is still there, they'll get right back up and start trying to punch you again. Because again, it's an abstraction. It's not literal. Like Kiryu didn't literally do that within the concept of the world. It is an over-the-top gameplay sequence because most of those interactions are not canonical.
Did you guys see?
Whenever the story occurs, Kiryu is like very anti killing. Like he doesn't kill anyone in those games.
Did you guys see that video of the guy was playing Breath of the Wild like Devil May Cry?
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty nuts. Speaking of Zelda, I feel like the Zelda games have enough in them that like combat. Well, I've always felt that combat was like the weakest part of those Zelda games.
It's just there
anyways.
because it needs to be there.
Yeah, I feel like Zelda. I feel like an indie studio could release a Zelda type of game without combat, and they could replace the combat with a more interesting mechanic.
Yeah, Majora's. We could actually. Yeah, like Majora's Mask, where the point of Majora's Mask is you have this gameplay object, the moon crashing, and that sort of gives context to every action you're performing. Just create a bunch of systems like that in the game that drive player behavior rather than just killing your way through the environment.
Even though Okami has violence in it, like that game has a lot of really interesting mechanics that are not related to the combat, like the brush strokes.
What are some of our favorite non-violent games? Where it's, I don't know. I mean, you can name a bunch of puzzle games, but like, I would.
What Remains of Edith Finch?
Okay. I would say something like Papers, Please.
Valhalla. Bartending cyberpunk action.
There's a lot of horror games you could throw into that mix.
Well, but that's.
But is it violence or is it combat systems?
It's technically combat.
Well, if
you're running. Well, I mean,
if you're running away from enemy, Amnesia doesn't have any combat. If you get caught, you just die, and there's no combat system. You're not supposed to be fighting.
Yeah, and sure,
that is violence. That is violence being used to contextualize failure states, but that is not.
Those aren't mechanics centered around the player, enacting violence.
In those games, you're just opening up drawers and finding keys and uncovering the eldritch horror of Brandenburg Castle, I think it was. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, Soma had the same problem, but that's what.
Didn't they patch in an option for Soma so that you could play the game without enemies?
I think that's a fan mod that they maybe implemented into the game.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember that, and apparently the game is better that way. But it's we have a horror game. We need to have monsters. We need to have fail states. We need to have death. And you can have death in the narrative by people dying because that's what's happening. But in the gameplay, it's a different thing. I mean, that's why I love Outer Wilds so much. That game has no violence.
Although you can die in it.
Yes, it has some implied violence, some implied death, but the main mechanic is information. you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Portal's a great
Yeah.
game. No violence.
Well,
I mean, there
yeah,
are the
end.
there are the turrets that shoot you, and you can destroy the turrets with the portals. But I think that's about it.
And
There's boss fights.
it's about the testing facility where you might die.
Sure, but if you're going that way, you have to grant that Amnesia is about, discovery. It's about exploration in this dank castle rather than about violence.
Yeah, sure.
Like, see, I don't think the problem is that games have violence. I think it's that
No.
they rely overly on mechanics for combat which don't communicate anything.
But I think it is a problem
yeah.
because when you have combat, when you have a game that has a lot of combat, you need to come up with a reason why are there so many enemies. You need to come up with a reason why is that character strong in combat. So
why am I fighting? Why does my character fight this way and not that way?
Yeah, and it's not like at that point you have already made a bunch of assumptions that the main character needs to be built around that. It can't be anyone.
Yes.
It needs to be some kind of soldier or some guy with powers. And then you have already limited the kind of story you can tell.
Yeah, but you've only limited it in the sense that there's going to be violence in the story. I mean, anybody can theoretically pick up a gun and become a video game protagonist. Like Harry Mason in Silent Hill 1 is not a soldier, he's a writer. And we don't, there's violence in Silent Hill, but we don't think of those necessarily as violent games.
If anything, those games incentivize the player to run away, and violence is a last resort.
Mm-hmm.
We also have games like Celeste that manage to have really compelling stories and non-violent gameplay.
Well,
I mean,
you die all the time.
I mean, yes, you die all the time. True, and you can fall into a spike or into a pit or whatever. But I don't think that necessarily makes the game violent.
I guess.
I think it's really hard to create fail states which don't imply some sort of violence done
Death.
onto you. Yeah,
death
basically.
or destruction when you're going the building route.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or basically just dismembering or violence done onto you to the extent that you can't continue. So we need to reset.
There was Valhalla I mentioned before. That has a really interesting fail state
That's the bar game, right?
The bartender game,
Yes.
right? If you do a bad job, then you can't pay rent, and that's the game over.
That's
you get
just Papers,
evicted.
Please.
Yeah.
I just think that's a really interesting way to contextualize a fail state, because it's your character's not dead, but they ruined their life, so they have to, you can't progress the story.
I think you can't I don't know if you can get away with that in AAA games though. Imagine if you're playing a AAA game and then you just get a text on screen which says something like, your character became depressed because he didn't go outside into the sun enough, or something like that. Just some weird abstract fail state. I think people would be furious.
They'd be like, what the fuck is this shit?
I think that's just as legitimate a fail state as any other.
Sure. I mean, depending on the game, but sure.
Yeah, sure. If it's a game where interacting with light or some shit is important.
Deadly Premonition originally wasn't supposed to have any combat in it, and the combat was shoehorned in because the producers are like, "What the fuck is this? Why? You gotta have guns in this."
Every time I hear about that game, I'm gonna look forward to playing it one day.
Get the Switch version. That's the best version of the game, unless you mod the PC version. I guess aren't the
glitches and the bugs and shit? Isn't that the appeal of the game?
I guess, but I mean, play it how you want, I guess.
No, but I'm genuinely serious here. Is it why did people fall in love with the game? Is it because it has a good story?
Partly. I wouldn't say the story is good in a traditional sense. It is fascinating. That's what I would say it is.
Okay.
It is a fascinating story. Not a good one, but very intriguing, and it will keep you on the edge of your seat.
See,
But yeah, you know, I've been scrolling through my Steam library, and it's kind of astounding, like how many of these games are literally just shoot bang, slashy slash, bang bang. You know, like almost all of these games are violent in some way.
Doesn't that say more about you than it does
No,
the games?
it's
though?
most games.
That you just play more violent games. No.
I mean, I like violent games. I'm not going to shy away from that.
That's why you're so violent in real life, I heard.
Of course, that's why I just walk out and punch people in the face.
You threatened to choke me earlier because I was talking
Sure
about
did.
Fate Zero.
Well, you know, it's all these violent games I'm playing. Clearly, like, goddamn, what's wrong with me?
Probably it's Devil May Cry. Those are very violent games.
That is true. Very violent.
Incredibly violent. But then you have games like would you put like survival games in the same group as like, I guess it's violence when you're like shooting arrows at rabbits for food. But that's not combat. That's just hunting. I think there's a distinct difference. It's both violence, I
think
guess.
there's still combat.
But I feel like the intent is different. Like for violence, that's you're punching somebody, you're trying to get through them. Whereas when you're trying to survive, it's you know motivations. I think should matter a bit here. It is still violence. Maybe it's just really hard to create a visual experience out of non-violence. Maybe that's the problem. More than gameplay.
Visual.
The games are visual and interactive, and I think we've established that you can definitely create mechanics which tell compelling stories that don't rely on violence.
I think the interactive part is the problem, not the visual one. I mean, movies are visual, and movies can tell a story like marriage stories.
Sure, but video game visuals have to follow gameplay, and you can make gameplay, I think, about pretty much anything, but if it's not visually engaging, then a mainstream audience probably isn't going to buy. Like Valhalla, that's not a visually engaging game. That's just right. That's just sort of like a point-and-click game, right? Or Papers, Please.
Sort of.
I don't know about Valhalla, but I've played Papers, Please. That's not a game for like a mainstream audience.
Yeah, Valhalla is definitely not like it's a visual novel. For first and foremost, like it's all about reading. Occasionally, you'll get some interactions where you will mix drinks,
yes.
And if you mix the wrong drink, like the game might have some line of dialogue. It's like, oh, you fucked it up, but then it'll just like continue.
And like with Papers, Please, that's not a visually interesting game. Those visuals are perfect for that gameplay, but that's not a visually interesting game.
Sure. I'd say Valhalla is probably at least a little more visually interesting compared to Papers, Please.
It's like cyberpunk neon, right?
Yeah, and you do see a different assortment of like well-animated characters. Like the portraits are done very well.
Yeah, I should have gone with Papers, Please immediately because I didn't know anything about Valhalla outside of like having seen some screenshots. But yeah, I think. On the gameplay side of things, the problem is generally a lack of, I don't want to say a lack of creativity, a lack of willingness to experiment.
Yeah.
Probably that's more on producers than game designers. The money men, they control everything. And on the visual side of things, I think it's just that a mainstream audience is not going to buy a game about a desk job.
Oh, I just remembered Her Story. That is a game. No violence. Oh, shit, wait. I guess you don't do any violence and you can't die, but the main story is about a murder, so shit.
No, that still counts. That's fine.
Okay, yeah. I don't know about Telling Lies, which is made, like, does that have any, like, murders in it?
Well, yes, one. It also does have people beating each other up. I mean, but that's just that's violence in the context of the narrative. That's not the game is about violence.
No, right, of course.
And the alternative is, of course, you could go down the road of like a Telltale game, or even these cinematic games you're talking about.
Even Telltale has violence in it through QTEs.
Yeah, but I think you could make those games like a. Do those what were those games? Life is Strange. Those games we dunked on. Do they have violence in them?
They have a bunch of violence, yeah. But that's not what the game is about. The game is about talking to people and puzzle solving.
Yeah,
what about games like Metal Gear and Undertale where you can technically play through those games non-violently?
Yeah, what about them?
I think it's interesting in that those are games that have violence in them, but it's totally viable to be able to play through them non-violently. Because in that instance, the onus is on the player. You're the one making the decision whether or not you want to be violent.
Undertale in particular is interesting because it calls out when you're being too violent.
Yeah, with the genocide route.
Yeah.
And the game actively punishes you for it by throwing the hardest boss fights in the game. And it tricks you because it makes you think that the game would be easier through the genocide route because you can level up and get stronger. It might seem like the game would be harder through a pacifist run because as a pacifist you don't level up, you don't increase your stats, but the game is in fact harder through the genocide route, which I think is really cool.
It's Undertale
it's kind of it's an interesting subversion because it flies in the face of like general like RPG mechanics where like you're conditioned to fight all the time because you level up, you get new gear, you're always getting stronger. And then that makes the game easier. And that's not really the case in Undertale.
Is Undertale like a good game? I only played like 10 minutes of it.
It's a very good game.
Have you not played Undertale?
Well,
I played it for like 10 minutes.
Okay. You should play Undertale.
You were not impressed?
I just put it down and then I didn't pick it up again for a few years.
Okay. I would suggest Deltarune because that is right now it's free. There's only chapter 1, so you can literally finish it in like 1 or 2 sittings.
Is that
I would suggest Undertale 100 times over Deltarune.
I'm just saying Deltarune is really quick. That's why I'm suggesting it.
Undertale is better and also not too long. And also, if he's already played it, then he got it already, right?
I guess.
It's just a really important game.
I don't know if it's fair to say Undertale is better than Deltarune, considering Deltarune is not a full game.
It's better than what Deltarune is at the moment.
I don't know. I don't think that's fair.
By the way, another type of non-violent gameplay is sports games.
Wow.
It depends. Like, I'd say football is kind of violent. Not American football, let me clarify.
European.
Well, but that's just competition.
Football, too. You can tackle people.
Yeah, that's just competition. Obviously, boxing is violent. But there are rules and there's a sport around it.
Yeah.
So basically, Acer, I think your argument is basically people are unwilling to create new and interesting mechanics that don't have violence in them because there is pressure to make violent games because it's the norm.
Yeah. And also when people do experiment, generally it's oftentimes people get unfairly criticized for experimenting. I can
agree with that. I
point to the world tendency mechanic.
What?
An argument I will not let die.
I was gonna say when walking simulators first started being a thing, there was like a huge pushback on those games because they were different.
That's also when I talked about Gone Home earlier. that's a totally engaging game. It's not like a masterpiece, I don't think, but that's like that is no worse than a Call of Duty campaign or a Battlefield campaign. That's like, it's a story, and you're playing and you're engaged and you're interacting with the world. It totally works. And
I've heard good things about Gone Home. I heard Dear Esther is kind of eh.
Dear Esther is really just that there is almost nothing to that.
Yeah, I've heard that game is not good.
A funny thing about those sort of walking sims is that I don't think those were created because of consumer demand. I think those were created because it's really easy to just buy a bunch of models, quickly put together some dirty levels, and then create like a script, like a trigger. As soon as the player walks to this or activates this or does this, then you play this piece of narration. It's just really easy to put them together.
I mean, now you're criticizing people for making non-violent games.
I'm not. I'm just saying. I think that walking simulators were created because it's easier than to create combat games. But that doesn't mean that. Sorry. but that doesn't mean that there's nothing to them. Like I said, Gone Home is, I think, pretty engaging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and I feel like
the problem with Dear Esther, I haven't played it either, but I heard the problem isn't the gameplay itself. It's that the story, like, you're not part of the story. You're incidental to what happens, and that's just
you're
boring.
You're also just walking around, and then a piece of narration plays, and you cannot advance until the narration is finished. So you're just sitting there in front of your laptop listening to a guy drone on about a boring narrative for 3 minutes. Whereas in Gone Home, you're reading notes and you're sort of you're walking through the house, you're finding keys hidden here or here or here, and like you're opening up emails and stuff. That's you are engaged in the story. Whereas with Gone Home,
you need to be part of the interaction.
Yeah,
It doesn't. It's not enough when you're just walking and things happen.
Yes.
There needs to be some kind of depth. I mean, the narrative can be deep too.
Otherwise you can just listen to an audiobook. Right? If there is no reason for Gone Home to be a video game. It does not benefit from being a video game. What did I say?
Gone Home.
You said Gone Home.
Oh yeah, I meant Dear Esther. There's no reason for that to be a video game. Like that could just be a movie or a book or an audio book. Yeah.
Doesn't the guys who made Dear Esther, the Chinese Room, they also made that bad Amnesia game, right?
Yeah, A Machine for Pigs that everyone hates.
I was so disappointed when that game came out.
What? I've been so curious. Why is it so bad? Like, what does everyone hate about it? Because I don't know anything about it.
Did you play the first one?
I played some of it.
Okay, so you get the basics of what made Amnesia good. It's like you have these mechanics.
Yeah, like it's spooky, and you're slowly piecing together, but with like notes and stuff, like what's going on, and you're trying to, you're figuring out the mystery.
You have to save resources. You have so much lamp oil. You can only
you have so many
tinder boxes.
You gotta make sure you have enough light so you don't go insane.
And and also if you're watching enemies, you also go insane. So you need to sort of stay mentally healthy. All of that stuff was scrapped from Amnesia 2. There's no health mechanic. There's no resources for lighting. You just have infinite lanterns. The game is half as long. The enemies just aren't scary. Like, there's no other way to put it. It's just like these really just goofy pigmen. And although I think there's like a nugget of a good idea there. Because it's like... So, presentation-wise, a downgrade from the first game is that Amnesia 1 really reveled in these sort of Lovecraftian eldritch horror, whereas Amnesia 2 doesn't. It is about this eldritch power as well, but it doesn't want to frame itself as a cosmic horror story or something like that. So it's just like this dark look at late 19th century London, but then it also has these pigmen in it. It's like contextualizing bad working conditions, like people are working in these factories and they're breathing in these coal fumes and they're destroying themselves, and look at how horrible this is, and also here's a pig monster, and it's just it lacks focus and it lacks the sort of complexity to make it engaging.
I was just thinking. I think a genre that is almost exclusively defined by violence that doesn't really need to are turn-based RPGs.
Yeah.
Let's say instead of you having like swords and spells or whatever weapons the character's using, and instead of like monsters, they could be conversations.
Yeah, it could be like Kaguya-sama Love is War, where it's just two people, like you said, conversations.
Yeah, like every turn-based interaction, instead of being a fight to the death, it's just the characters talking, and whoever wins the discussion wins the engagement through completely non-violent
So what
ways.
you're saying is the fencing minigame from Monkey's Island.
Yeah. Except, minus like the actual fencing, I guess. But like, yeah, that.
But there's no fencing.
You.
It is just someone says a line and you need to have the proper retort. And
yeah, you need to outwit
then
them.
a fencing animation plays. There's no gameplay behind that.
And
I know.
The thing about if you did that with an RTS game, it's sort of funny. The win state isn't determined by the game. Like if you're debating with your girlfriend whether you go to a party or whether you go to a movie, if you secretly want to go to the party, you can make like an argument for going to the movies, and then she accepts to do something else for you in the party. She'll like cook for you something nice or something, and then you get everything you want. And it's like that's actual strategy, but it's contextualized in a relationship setting.
Boken, throughout this whole thing, I am shocked that you haven't brought up Gorogoa.
Because it's the classic puzzle game. It's a very innovative puzzle game, but that's the exception.
But there's no violence in
but
it like,
that's
at all.
like games like Gorogoa, like The Witness, like Portal. Those are games that I accept. They don't really play into this because they have their own niche. That is
sure.
Puzzle solving.
Sure,
puzzle
I hear
solving
you.
by itself is relatively non-violent usually.
Because I just saw it on my Steam list, so that's why I brought it up. But right next to it is Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. I don't know if you've played this game or heard of it.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of it either. I think it's pretty annoying. But, I mean, technically speaking, that is also a game with... There's no violence in it. You can't die. You're not fighting anything. You're just trying to climb this mountain in a really obnoxious way.
That game is a walking simulator with very high penalties for failure, basically.
Yeah. But I think Getting Over It establishes... Because you were mentioning before, like, Untitled Goose Game has failure states because it forces you to redo progress, and I didn't agree with that. And in Getting Over It, it has the same sort of thing where the game isn't coming out and telling you that you failed. You just know that you failed. And I think there is a difference there, because I think if the game is telling you game over, that's a failure state. But I think if it's just a lack of progress that you need to redo, but the game isn't changing itself to say, like, because, in a sense, when you see a game over screen, the game has changed. It is now in a different state. That's why it's called a fail state.
Sure. Yeah, I guess. I feel like the distinction is fairly unimportant, though.
Sure,
but I'm willing to backpedal. I'll grant you that there is a difference.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a meaningful difference, but
it could be, though, if like a game really capitalized on that.
Sure.
This podcast has gone on
definitely.
For a while now.
Yeah, it has. You're right. All right. I guess we can wrap it up. I mean, so Boken, what are your final thoughts?
Well,
what are you doing, Boken?
Well, no, you asked me two different questions.
I'm just asking you what your final thoughts are.
Okay. Yeah, no. I mean, basically, we're sitting here. We're playing armchair game designer. I guess
Except
Acer
me.
is actually
I'm an actual
a
game designer now.
I am I am technically an artist, and I don't see myself that way, but I am technically one. So, what is that word really? Anyway,
You
the
guys
point
can
is
bet your ass
the
that
point is what
if I ever release my game, I'm gonna have to force you to introduce me as game designer.
anyway,
Oh, God.
basically we're just sitting here and we're saying people need to be more inventive, which
Oh yeah, which is the most enlightened take
Yeah.
you can give.
surprise me. That's an easy thing to say, and obviously it's difficult
Yeah.
to make games outside of the norm.
Of course, we are residing with in our ivory towers, smelling our farts.
But
I've said this multiple times though. There is nothing wrong with violence in games as long as you're not making like some fucking disgusting murder simulator just for the sake of like
Oh, you mean that
shocking
game,
people.
That game Hatred, where you're just going into schools and shooting kids.
Sure, as like garbage like that, whatever. Fuck that.
I think
but like
yeah.
No.
I think my final words on this subject are that we need to understand that violence and combat in games, it always implies certain parts in the narrative. Like you can't have a lot of combat without the character being a certain way, certain things happening. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for example, in anime, there's a lot of anime that is about combat, about like shonen, about characters beating ever stronger enemies. And those anime often work towards the same themes and the same plot points, like overcoming difficulties and all that, right?
Yeah.
And that's cool. There's a lot of good shonen out there. I watch a lot of it and I love it. But we need to understand that if I want to tell a different story, then I need to. There can't be combat. There can't be constant violence. There needs to be something else. And I think it's the same with games.
Yes. It doesn't make sense for an action scene in a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
Why would it make sense for, like you said?
And that's why
I think that's
why we shouldn't go to games with just at the outset. We need to have combat. We need to have respawning enemies like an army or something.
But the thing is, that's what sells. I'm looking through my Steam library. Most of these games are violent, and the reason is because they sell. Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is hugely successful.
Yeah, but
and it's got tons of violence.
That's sure, but Minecraft has violence in it, but it doesn't. It doesn't need it. Like that, and that game
it's not
is
the point of the game.
That game is totally successful. Pokemon, you could recontextualize that as, like you said earlier, with an RTS or something, where it's just people having conversations. Like you can make anything work, and I think that so long as if your game finds an audience, I think any well-made product can be successful. It won't always be, but it can be.
Sure. I agree with you, but what I'm saying, the fact remains, the general perception is that your game has to have violence in it if it's going to be successful. Why else did they tell Swery to add guns in this fucking game that wasn't supposed to have guns if they didn't think that it would help sell the game?
True. They should have just put guns in a trailer and then removed it from the actual game.
Poor Swery. He was just trying to make his goofy little Twin Peaks homage. Didn't want to put guns in it. Oh, well.
Oh, well. So, yeah, that's the...
All right, Acer, what are your final words?
Same as Boken's. If, just, presentation is very integral to the narrative. If you want violence as the presentation, then your narrative is going to be about violence. If you want your narrative to be about something other than violence, then you need to take a chance and make the presentation something else. And I think, yeah.
Okay. I think violence is pretty cool.
I do too.
Like, I love a bunch of games that are like super violent, but at the same time, there are a bunch of games I like that aren't violent.
Tell me something. Do you think would you say Devil May Cry is violence? Like I feel like that's too silly to really be violent. I feel like that's sort of satirical.
It's I mean, it's violent in a technical sense, but I wouldn't say it's a violent game because the tone of the Devil May Cry games is very sarcastic and like tongue in cheek. Like that's why Dante is always goofing on the demons and he's like riding them like skateboards and shit because he doesn't. It's not meant to be taken that seriously. There are some aspects, like Dante's relationship with Virgil is meant to be taken seriously, even as they're joking with each other.
And that part where he wanted to fill, was it Trish's soul with light or something?
Yes.
I'm gonna put that. Totally. I'm gonna put that in the episode.
But I think that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
That's more about the game's tone.
Yeah, it's still violence in the sense of what are the characters doing? They're attacking, they're killing, they're defending, they're avoiding, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Although I think that could be an interesting idea for a game where you're constantly being attacked and you just have to find ways to avoid, like maybe a game that's like all about dodging and parries or something. That'd be kind of neat. You have like lots of cool, interesting mechanics where you're just like finding ways to avoid violence. I don't know. An idea. But yeah, I think violence in games is pretty cool. But games that aren't violent are also pretty cool. And I'd like to see more of those just because we already have plenty of games that are violent. So it'd just be nice to see more interesting things being done with the medium because video games are such a cool medium where there's so many different ways to convey ideas and concepts and mechanics. Like a mechanic is just a collection of systems, and we simply choose to contextualize them in these different ways.
Wasn't there
like I was saying before about first-person shooters? There is a way to contextualize the violence as something else because it's just a collection of systems, and that can be done in a way that's not violent.
Wasn't there a scene in What Remains of Edith Finch where your character is like cutting fish in a factory, but they're sort of daydreaming about something else, and then the game, that was such a cool scene.
Yes.
Where like your character's daydreaming and it sort of takes over the game, but the game's still playing.
Yes. Yeah, that sequence is amazing.
So yeah, that's the episode. Make better games, idiots.
I mean, still make violent games because, violent games are cool. But, like, if you got an idea that's not about killing things, try to make it work. You never know.
You never know. You might be the next Minecraft. You might be the next Fortress Craft.
Yeah, you might be the next Tetris, although I doubt it because Tetris is, like, the biggest puzzle game in the world. But you know what I mean. Try different stuff. Take my idea about like turn-based combat and turning it into conversations instead. Like, I would love to play a game like that. That sounds awesome.
Work on your own ideas.
Yeah, like when you level up, instead of increasing strength, you increase cunning or something, and then it allows you to like argue better during those confrontations. Whatever.
I think that's what Disco Elysium is doing. I still need to play it.
Yeah, I still need to play that too.
I was watching the Game Awards when they were on stage, and they went on stage like 5 different times. And one of those times, the girl said, "I would like to thank Karl Marx for educating us about politics." And I was like, ugh, controversial.
I didn't know she said that. That's interesting.
That's not that controversial. Karl Marx has done historical analysis that is pretty on point.
Yeah, sure, but like you
don't need to follow his politics. He obviously got his politics from his analysis, but he has provided information about previous events.
Sure, but I mean, it's a body of politics. Whatever. Well, it doesn't matter.
It's Marxism.
Marxism. Fucking communism.
All right. That's the end of this episode. Wait, hold on a sec. We need to talk about stuff that we made. Except for Boken. He hasn't made
Yeah.
shit.
He's too busy playing his fighting games, Pokemon and Street Fighter V.
Yeah. Acer, you released your Silent Hill 3 video.
I did.
How was that?
It was fun. I'm
Fun.
done. I'm free from it. I'm free. It's
I
like,
know how you feel.
It's like 5 or 6 months, and I'm done.
So I like to dunk on you because you're a dumbass.
I am.
But I genuinely, without like any, without like trying to be a dick, or I genuinely really liked your Silent Hill 3 video. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it because Silent Hill 3, I don't think, Silent Hill 3 and 4, I don't think get enough attention. It's always 1 and 2 that seem to hog all the spotlight. And,
Yes.
fair enough. Those are great games and they deserve it. But so do 3 and 4. And seeing someone do the homework, do the research, and give Silent Hill 3 the love that it deserves, I think it was something really special. And I really appreciated it. And I actually want to watch it again one of these days just because I really enjoyed it. And I thought the insight that you provided helped me appreciate the game in new ways as well. So I want to really thank you for that. You did a great job.
Thank you. Do you also want to sing my praises, Boken?
I haven't watched it because I haven't played Silent Hill 3.
Yeah. So yeah, I made that. Now I'm programming throughout January, and then I'll make the Demon Souls video I promised people, and then I'll program, and then I'll make the Deadly Premonitions video if I like the game.
God,
Oh, you're going to make one on Deadly Prem?
you're gonna make one on
See,
Demon
I,
Souls?
Yes,
You
I
can
am.
just
You're all
talk about
gonna.
fucking grass and the dumbass.
You're all
what's
gonna
the
eat
fucking
shit.
system?
World
Well,
tendency.
tendency. Oh, fuck.
And
Well,
character
tendency.
tendencies.
Bah.
You're all gonna, you boys, history will remember me as like a man ahead of his time. He refused to accept the common dribble of the masses. He thought for himself.
He was a true hero.
Uh,
Well, you're at least a hero when you release your Silent Hill 3 video, so
Yeah.
you could feel good about that.
I do.
really enjoyed it genuinely. It was very good.
And I will make the Silent Hill 4 video, not in the foreseeable future, but eventually.
Looking forward to it. I've actually been meaning to make a video about Silent Hill 4 as well. I want to like go in depth about the room itself because it's such a cool concept that no one has tried to rip off. Like, if people stop ripping off Dark Souls, start ripping off the room. Like, come on.
I think I said this in the Silent Hill 3 I think Silent Hill 4 is, from a gameplay perspective, one of the most valuable, not just horror games, just video games ever made. Just there are so many interesting ideas about how to present this sort of narrative jam-packed into this game. It's just a little bit of polish, guys. Just a little bit more polish.
Yeah, and maybe not have the second half of the game going through the same levels, and you have to babysit some fucking stupid AI character. Ugh. And if she takes too much damage, you get a shit ending. Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
But
What are you doing, Daniel?
Well, I did release my school days video a couple of months ago. I don't think we talked about it on the show much. I know you both watched it. What did you guys think of it?
I liked it, even though I had, like, you were saying names of characters, and I was like, who was that again? Who was that again? Because I never watched the show.
Right, I tried to present it in a way that if you hadn't seen the show, you could still generally follow along.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to hold people's hands and be like, oh, by the way, this is this character every time. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's more on me. What do you think, Bogan?
I found it looked like an anime that I do not want to watch because it looked really ugly and it seemed just disgusting in the way it treats the female characters. And,
Yeah.
and I get that that's kind of the point, but I couldn't understand why these fucking women all fall for this dumbass main character.
This total loser.
Yeah, like what kind of sway does he have that everyone wants to be with him?
He's an anime protagonist.
I think as the show goes on, it makes more sense because he's become like some weird hot commodity. But in the beginning of the show, like, doesn't make much sense. Like, Sekai, especially, like the main girl who kills him at the end, it's never really established like what it is about Makoto she even likes. It's never explained like what is her infatuation with him. At least with Kotonoha, the girl with the big tits, like, and the one that's like really demure and goes crazy towards the end. With her, she's like extremely lonely because she's this, rich girl that is really shy. So nobody tries to approach her. She doesn't try to approach anyone. So I get it makes sense why she would cling on to Makoto. That loneliness is something that's going to force, like, it's going to push her to make bad decisions and be with him. But yeah, Sekai doesn't make much sense. But then after all the drama happens, then like it kind of word gets around that like he's supposedly really, really good in bed, I guess. And then he, starts screwing all the girls. Like any pair of tits with legs is, in the show. But yeah, kind of the purpose of that video was discussion around that show is dominated almost exclusively by how much people hated the main character and how shocking the ending was. So my intention was I wanted to explain why the show is infamous, which is the title of the video, a study in infamy. But I also wanted to explain like why the main character is hated, why the ending is the way it is, and why people remember it. But I also had the goal of, hey, the show has other stuff to talk about. This isn't the only two things to discuss with this show. And I hate this show. I hate this fucking show. And even I think, the discussion around it is pretty, like, bad. Like, the discourse is just not very good. So I wanted to present a lot of interesting talking points, all of which is still connected to the themes of infamy and, how this relates to the ending and all that good stuff. But, and why it's a bad show and why it's infamous and all that stuff. But like also just bring some interesting stuff up and just be like, hey, look at this vision that Sekai has right before she kills Makoto. This is what this means. Isn't that interesting? Like, doesn't this recontextualize why she kills Makoto? Doesn't it make you think a little bit more about, these characters? So, yeah, that was kind of my intent. And I think I did an okay job. Some people seem to like it, so that's cool. I'm glad you guys liked it, even though you hadn't watched it. So I think that says I did an okay job.
What's the deal with the Tales series? Is that like a good series?
I like it. I think it's good.
It's a really bloated series, right? Big series, I should say.
Should we do this off the mic?
Yeah, let's.
All right. Well, no. Now the audience is like, wait, I want to hear about the Tales series.
You have like 20 videos on it or something.
I don't have that many videos about it. But that does lead me to the next series of videos I'm going to be making, which is about finally Tales of Zestiria.
Yes.
I had been.
I was leading you into this.
I had been meaning to make this Tales of Zestiria video for a long time, and the way I'm finally going to be able to get it out is to cut it up into parts. I think the idea of releasing it as one big video was what kept me from releasing it for so long. But after doing that for school days, I'm like, fuck that. I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to cut it up into 4 parts. Part 1 is going to be talking about level design. Part 2 is going to be talking about the combat. Part 3 is going to be talking about the progression systems and the weapon fusion and all that shit. Mm. And the final part's going to be talking about the writing, the story, and the characters. So, yeah, look forward to that. Part 1 will hopefully be up this month. That's the plan. It should be up sometime January. This month of January. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah. Boken, do you have any plans?
I plan on going to a bunch of tournaments. And I'm
not releasing any videos. No. Damn.
You
okay.
should.
Acer, what's your next video?
Oh, I already said I was gonna make a Demon Souls video in February.
I wasn't sure if it was gonna be Demon Souls next or something else.
That's Demon Souls next. I promised people I'd do Demon Souls next.
Okay.
I was gonna do Crash Bandicoot next, but then I feel like that's not really a video.
Well, I promise that the next thing I do will be Tales of Zestiria, and then hopefully after Zestiria, or maybe during the release of these 4 videos, I don't know, I'd like to do that Silent Hill 4 video.
Yeah.
All right, that's it, everyone. That's an episode.
You'll be able to find me and Daniel on the micro essay video 2, I believe.
Yes, micro essay mixtape, volume 2, 1 minute remaining.
20th of January, 2020.
Look forward to it. All right, that's it, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.